Hello, and welcome to the Humanity, where we do the things with the stuff for the people. I'm Matt.
And I'm Tommy. And tonight we are starting what we figure might very well be a more than one episode's worth of discussion on the topic of neurodivergencies and how they are handled specifically by Christianity and the church, but probably also touch on a little bit of how it's handled by society at large. Um, yeah. Specifically tonight, anyway, focusing on a particular article on the issue from the Gospel Coalition. So you already
There,
know that's going to be good.
there's some favorite people of ours.
Mm-hmm.
They're up there with I don't know, telling a lot of fundamentalists what they should do and believe and how to do the belief,
Mm-hmm.
and
And believe the
especially in
dudes.
the
And
southern United States.
yeah,
Um, but there's peoples up here that like what they say or trust what they say.
yeah. I remember it's. Yeah, I don't necessarily remember them so much from my days in like the more like conservative fundamentalist evangelical circles, but a lot of the people I know that are still in those circles, I see like talking about them a lot or posting articles from them a lot. So,
Yeah, I think
but
they
yeah.
got much bigger the more like website presences became a thing in Christian culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, before we get to that, what you drinking there tonight, Matt?
I am drinking Imperial Amber from Great Lakes. It's their
Ooh.
35th anniversary special doodah, and it's a 12.1% alcohol, aged in bullet bourbon barrels,
Mm.
and it's damn good.
Is this the one you had last week?
It is. I just didn't have the
Nice.
bottle last week with me.
Ah, the beer's so nice you're having it twice.
Mm-hmm,
All
mm-hmm.
right. So I'm going with. I may or may not have had this one before. I know I've had the tropical version, but this just good old Mad Tree Psychopathy, Psychopathy, however people want to
That's their
pronounce that.
flagship beer if they ever had one.
Mm-hmm. Now, in my opinion, as much as I love this, in a way, I'm really confused as to why it's not Happy Amber. Because that is just such a. That's one of the best, just all around, goes with anything, any situation, always good
Yeah,
kind of beers I've ever had.
I,
But
just, I think it had to do with when they launched to their original smaller location,
mm,
and that's what was that was before IPAs really took off, and so like the beer nerds were into IPAs, but not the general public, and so I think that was kind of like their street cred initially.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, that could be. Oh well. Like I said, either way, still tasty. So
no, Happy Amber is good. Gnarly Brown,
yeah,
it's
well,
Naughty Brown now. It used to be
yeah.
called Gnarly Brown until there was like a Gnarly Brown winery or another brewery or something.
Mm-hmm.
Not anywhere
Well,
near the same market, but they wanted to sue.
yeah, because they're ridiculous. I don't know. So yeah. Well, anyway, so um, any like before we get to the article, any other just kind of general thoughts or
Um,
yeah
um,
things to put out there? Yeah.
the weather sucks around here.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
it's stirring up like a bunch of crud in the air because I've been feeling sick.
Yeah, I was feeling kind of today too. I don't know if it's just because it was just kind of what Tuesday is usually one of my longer work days, and I also had a dentist appointment this morning. But
Oh,
yeah, because I was in there a couple months ago for fillings, and like one of the fillings they gave me was like in there, like, oh, I didn't even know I needed a filling there. Wasn't having any issues, but then after I got a filling, it then all of a sudden hurt to chew on that tooth. So
yeah, that meant it's sitting up a little high.
yeah,
They had
so
to,
yeah, I went in today and he kind of grinded some more on it or something like with a drill. He didn't grind on it. Like
yeah, yeah,
that sounded weird.
He put on some Ace of Base and just went.
I mean, I like the guy, but we're strictly professional relationship. So
I don't know why the Ace of Base made it sound creepier to me.
yeah, it did. I'll go with it. Yeah, sure. So
you're like, what are you doing? Then you hear the music. You're like, oh, ah! It's so
I
much
need an
worse.
adult. All right. So, speaking of neurodivergency, so before we get to the article from our friends over at TGC, that's what we call them because we're friends. We're on a initial basis. TGC,
Sure,
the
that's
Gospel
what all the friends
Coalition.
do.
Is that what the thing's called? Yeah. That's why I call you MH all the time.
All the time.
Yep. All the time, just as many all the times as God is good all the time.
All the time, none of the time.
Mm-hmm. Half of the time I do it, and none of the time. All right. So a couple of things I was thinking about when I was first thinking of this as a topic. Because there's been lots of things over the years, just as I've been learning. Like, I haven't been like officially diagnosed with anything. Like, I guess you've had some diagnoses.
Yep.
I mean, now I definitely suspect I have some neurospiciness, as the kids are calling it.
I do like that term. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But then as I've been learning more about that, just learning the way those different things manifest and like different ways it affects how your brain works and what makes certain things easier, makes certain things more difficult. And then just remembering back to my days in Christianity and all the things that I'm learning, like, oh, there were some things that I was basically taught were like weaknesses or just downright sinful, that I'm like, no, that's just ADHD, autism, OCD, like the whole range of things. Think of like some specific examples, like, I'm a pretty introverted person, but things like evangelizing and like getting to know like all of your unsaved friends and neighbors and inviting them all to church. But I mean, first of all, like as a kid, it's like, I don't even want to be at church. So the idea of approaching strangers and telling them they should come to this thing I don't even want to go to, and like that just sounds all kinds of horrible, especially when I'm also like brought up thinking all the people of the world, like they hate the church. So you're telling this kid who's introverted, probably has social anxiety and like various other things, like, here, go to all these people who probably hate you for who you are and tell them more about that thing that they hate you for.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, that nope. Just nope.
Well, but you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you.
Right. So then that just added,
including the things that your brain can't do.
Right. So then that just like piled on some guilt on top of it. Like, I should be able to do this, but I can't. Now I'm being a terrible person. And
and you got to marshal all your internal resources to like pretend to be outgoing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm being a terrible person, and all my neighbors are going to hell. So it is a mess. So, I mean, and that's just like the tip of the iceberg as far as that goes. Like things like, and I don't know if we want to go into more specific examples just from personal life, or if you just want to head into the article. And because I know you had a bunch of notes with some assistance, but
I had some AI assistance. Did some of the executive functioning on my behalf.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. That's another huge one, like executive dysfunction. I think not just like the church or religion, but I think like also want to touch on just like how society as a whole kind of teach.
Because these things totally
and I think, things like the phrase, like I'm sure you've heard a lot, but the whole like, well, if this was really important to you, you'd make time for this, or you would
that one
be more proactive.
Because that sounds like good logic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one got me a lot.
Yeah, it's like no, clearly they don't. People, whoever abides by that doesn't understand executive dysfunction
Yeah,
and the
it's
torture it is for the mind who wants to be able to focus on certain things more and commit to
yeah,
things more, but just either just plain can't, or it's just like far more difficult to do. Yeah. And then
yeah.
again,
People
speaking of the
don't.
guilt, and yeah.
Yeah, people don't seem to. Well, yeah. I'll say this. No, we should probably. I think if as we talk about the article, like our own experiences will come out also, um, and that way that'll help us like be a little bit more fluid with our thoughts instead of
Hmm.
like scattershot.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
my brain just kind of sneezes out topics.
That's how we like it. Now, yeah. So I love how like on our week where we're discussing neurodivergency, we're like doing our best to try to avoid like the neurodivergent pitfalls. That so let's see how
Well,
well
that's
we
a good
do.
point.
Yeah.
No, I think like what you're saying about if it was if it was really important to you, you'd be able to do it, or you all that. And it's really hard to explain to people that. I mean, because I deal with this, I think, with my immediate family and extended family, where like, how do you explain to someone that um, not doing something has or having a hard time like responding to text messages from family or staying in touch consistently or being on time
Mhm.
somewhere is like, how do you explain to someone that like what you do or don't do has is not a strong indication of what's important to you?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're like,
For sure.
but how do you not do it if it's important to you? Because that in a neurotypical brain, you people just do what they want, or at least that's their perception,
Yeah.
assuming that there's free will in that scenario.
Yeah. Exactly. But because
Honestly,
there's a
okay. I think I had forgotten about this, but I think something like a great way to explain to people who are neurotypical what being neurodivergent is like, and I think this works for whether it's like a mental health challenge or if it's something like executive function or sensory stuff like ADHD or autism. Um, People who are neurodivergent are more aware of background thoughts and background processes in the brain that are going on than neurotypical people are. And so, like people who deal with depression, like their focus is automatically on the negative, like thought patterns going on in the background. Like they're more aware of that than neurotypical people are, because there's just like a whole bunch of like programs that our brains are running simultaneously. And
Mhm.
when you have good executive, good, not good, when you have more functional executive functioning, your
Right.
brain filters out all the background programs that are running. Um, and yeah, and so it's like, okay, somebody who's neurotypical, you're like, that thought, like, you think that, and then you just like don't think about it anymore. You're like, I didn't like that, and or that wasn't helpful, or that was just not related. uh, well, our brains don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So because there's an idea or concept or whatever that has been coming up in my mind a lot is again just learning more about myself and how my brain works, and then same with like other people that I know, and the way people like will assign motives with
Oh
things
yeah,
like
yeah,
that, with the whole like, well, if this was important to you, because I think what people do, and this is like completely understandable, I mean, I do this all the time too, uh, is when you see someone else doing something or not doing something, you kind of relate it to yourself and say, okay, well, if I were doing that, or if I were not doing this, this would be the reason for me. So if someone's thinking, oh, if something's important to me, I'm going to do it. And if they have a track record of doing it. So if they see someone else not doing it, they're like, oh, well, if I wasn't doing a thing, then that means to me, it's really not that important. So that must be what's going on in that person's head.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just realize, yeah, other people aren't necessarily doing things for the same reasons that you would or wouldn't be doing those things.
And I
Yeah.
remember from psychology in college, there's something called the fundamental attribution error. And it's when negative behavior, or what you perceive as negative behavior by another person, you attribute that to their character instead of literally any other cause. So, like if someone has problems being on time and they're neurodivergent, like with the fundamental attribution error, you would label that character flaw uh, instead of something else is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like an automatic thing that like every person does, and it's probably one of those threat avoidance techniques from evolution. Like if you assume the worst about someone, not just the worst, but like an unchangeable worst.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
you assume somebody who is
That's the thing.
behaving negatively, especially when they're an outsider, it's safer
Mhm.
to assume they're a threat than not.
Right. Right.
But only when survival is actually like really difficult like that
Mm.
does it
Yeah.
actually work.
Yeah. And I think, and this could be just me or maybe other people said it too. I don't know. But I think when it comes to, like you said, assigning like motive to it, um, as far as it being like a moral thing.
Hmm.
'Cause I think this also goes back to, and it's like is connected to religion, but it might even be older than religion and like a separate thing. And maybe like religious concepts just kind of glommed onto or whatever. But there seems to be this idea that when it comes to someone's personality, like that, like in their behavior, other than just like the more natural things like, breathing, sleeping, seeing, moving, just there's certain things that are considered just like more natural actions and other things that are considered, well, this is probably more connected to like your soul or your spirit, so when
Right.
it comes to like your personality and things like that. But I think like the more we're learning about, brains and consciousness and it's like I think it's just kind of all chemistry essentially, at least from what little, like, relatively little, like very surface knowledge I have of things. But I mean, I at least have that suspicion. So because again, like so many things that we used to consider like personality flaws or character flaws, we're like, oh no, that's just, we've started classifying things as, we'll call them things like, mental illness or
Yeah.
whatever. But we feel like, no, this is like an actual condition, like with the person's brain. Like it's
Yeah,
not.
like addiction is a big one.
Yeah.
In Russia,
Yeah.
to like the way they treat, first of all, alcoholism in Russia is like normal. It's almost
Mm.
typical. Um,
Well, they got all that vodka. Somebody's got to drink it.
yeah, like it's yeah. Anyway, so they have a lot of soldiers who are alcoholics just because the general population is alcoholic, and they'll like drink on duty sometimes, and so there's this weird thing where they'll kind of overlook um, being drunk even if you're on duty. Like they kind of overlook that as long as it doesn't start, as long as the alcoholism isn't so bad that like that's all you want to do is drink because
Mm-hmm.
you were drafted and you don't want to be here and they won't let you leave unless you're dead, that kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
um
That's a bitch.
yeah,
Yeah.
and but what they'll do is they blame the person completely, like it's their character flaw, and so they'll be like beaten or
Mm.
uh they'll be sent to like a an assault battalion, call them, I think they call them Z squads or something. Then it became V squads. And basically, those people, there's like an 80% chance that when you go into your first mission, you are not going to live
Mm.
because Russia,
Yeah.
they make a
Whew.
lot of people and a lot of weapons, and they like to use a lot of both.
Yeah. Yeah. Use. Yeah.
Yep.
For sure. All right. Well,
So that's how bad it can get.
Speaking of how bad it can get, let's go to the Gospel Coalition. So, also, this
Neat.
is the first show I'm streaming from my new computer that I got. So,
Oh, fancy.
yeah,
You
webcam
know,
seems to be working all right so far. So we'll see how everything else goes.
I think it's
Yeah.
sharper. It
Oh,
might be better than
nice.
mine. Although my light is a little lower here, so
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, before I was using a Chromebook. Now I'm using like an actual like computer.
yeah, not using
So,
the man's laptop anymore.
yeah, and I was using the man's laptop. I don't know. Whoever Dell is, like, I don't know. All right. So here we go. Here is the Gospel Coalition in their article, The FAQs Thinking Biblically About Neurodivergence. Which, I mean, first of all, like, I'm just always, I mean, I understand it's the Gospel Coalition. So clearly this is what they're going to be doing. But to me, just the whole like thinking biblically about whatever.
Yeah, change your thinking. Let the Bible do your thinking for you. It's
Yeah. And again, this is just again just this whole concept of just looking at reality isn't enough. Even though apparently our God like
or
created reality and is the God of truth and truth is reality and all this. Like, no, you can't just look at how things are. You gotta read this old book, a set of books
and
about
this is going
what's
to be
really happening. Yeah.
probably a running theme for me, like going through the article, is uh, yeah, think biblically, refer to the Bible, refer to, I don't know, some stranger named Laura writing an article about things in your life. And
Right.
um, it's like, just talk to neurodivergent people. Like,
Mm.
ask them what
What?
helps them. Yeah, like, what helps them feel all of the fruit of the spirity things in their hoedown of a life. Like, I, you know what I, like it. Well, there's another article that we might do
Yeah. I like
in
that
a,
hoedown of a life. I'm gonna use that. Yeah.
where there was another article I looked at that was written by two neurodivergent people, one with ADHD, one with autism, and I was like, oh, it could be good, and I think it's worse. Um. Anyway,
With their
but
powers combined.
it does bother me when you're like, we're going to talk about these people who are neurodivergent meaning not like typical, and there's
Mm-hmm.
neurodivergence within the neurodivergent people. Like there's a spectrum within a spectrum, and
Right.
looking at one source and saying, like, these people are all different and they're very unique, so let's refer to this monolith that tells us how to handle all the different. Like, it doesn't.
Yes, this very internally different monolith, but
Yeah.
but not if you ask them.
Shh.
No.
No, not a spectrum. It's the Bible, the book, not a collection of books.
Well, it's like
Library. Oh, come
well,
on.
it's yeah. They'll still even if they admit it's a collection of books, but they were all still written by God, just through different people. It's still the same. It's the same message. It's like they're completely consistent all the way through. Just don't read it to verify that. Just
Yeah.
speaking of just taking someone's word for it, which, and we'll get to that. Which when you bring up your AI notes, I love all the logical fallacies that it pointed out in this. So, but before we say what AI or just we found, like as we're reading along, tell us if you and the audience there spot any logical fallacies or issues or whatever. And also let me know, like I zoomed in on here, so hopefully um, this is big enough for people to read. So, all right. So, were there any specific parts of it you're wanting to touch on first? Or,
Well, I didn't really have any problems with the definitions and origins part in the beginning.
yeah.
Like the first couple
Hmm.
paragraphs.
Yeah.
I thought it might have been a little misleading to just call it a social framework. The term neurodivergent, um, and to say explicitly that it's not a medical diagnosis. I think the way it was phrased makes it
Hmm.
a little easy for anybody um, who wants to picture it as just something society made up, and it's not it's just a label for people who are weird, you know. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, what she said wasn't incorrect. I thought just knowing the audience this is going to play to, really leaning on it's still a meaningful term, even if it's not like an official. It's like a catch-all for like a category of diagnoses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, the first part was actually handled pretty well. And this author apparently does work with special needs kids or something with special needs students. I looked
Mm-hmm.
at the little bio at the end.
And
It
I think
didn't
they
say,
mentioned like I think they mentioned something about one of their kids.
yeah.
Yeah, as
Um,
well.
Weirdly, though, it didn't say what school or school system um, she works with or for. Uh, that was a little weird. It makes me think that this is probably a Christian school. And if that's the
Mm.
case, then she doesn't need a degree in it to be a specialist at that school.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes a lot of sense of some of her ways of discussing things.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm like, you're saying things that somebody with a master's in this or a bachelor's uh, just would have been told is wrong.
Yeah, but you
Yeah,
see,
so
that's man's word against God's word. That's what
yeah.
that is.
So in short, she kind
So,
of neurodivergent was a term. Neurodivergence also was a term that came about in the 1990s, um, which is when it started to be okay to be ADHD and autistic. Like that's when, yeah, I think that because I was diagnosed with ADHD in like '99, and there was like a local center that opened up
hmm.
for ADHD in adults and teens, like one of the first in the country because everybody thought that ADHD was outgrown in adulthood.
Mm.
And like, no. uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so man, it ends up going all right in the beginning, and no big
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah, the only thing that stuck out to me in the beginning here, and I don't know if I would call this an issue, but more again, just phrase. It's like, all right, so like, and it's even like this highlighted paragraph here on the right. It says the
Yeah.
concept of neurodivergence might be best thought of as our culture's attempt to make sense of the complexity and diversity of God's good design for the human mind. Now,
Oh, you're like fallacy
it's
much?
well, there's that, but no, but here's my issue with it, like kind of going back to the whole just looking at reality and needing someone else to explain reality to you, whether it's a pastor or the Bible and, a whole bunch of books or whatever. So if God's good design for the human mind
Yeah.
is something that we need to like struggle to make sense of, how good
Yep.
of first of all, how good of a design was it? And second, how good of a job is he doing explaining his design of our own fucking minds
Yeah,
to us that
and like so we the thing with like ADHD and autism is that it's different for girls, especially if the girl is cute, because they grow up in school and girls are given a pass with a lot more ADHD symptoms um,
mm,
because
yeah.
there's that just like old stereotype of girls being flighty, um,
Mm,
and so there's a lot of things that they're like certain women don't realize until they're older because um, if they are considered attractive by boys or men, even from other women, they're kind of given a pass. Uh, just like, oh, that's just their personality. It's like, no, it's something they're like. It's not that you're allowing that person
mm,
go through their life, um, not knowing that they're struggling with something because
yeah.
your
Mm,
society and just like stereotypes are acting like a crutch, and that's gross. I don't think I was gonna say
yeah.
sinister, but it's not really on purpose. So, but no, that's just not okay. It would be better if they
Yeah.
knew and
Hmm.
like they could experience life more completely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, and where I was going with that is like we don't need neurodivergent people don't need society's pressure telling them things and making them feel guilty. Like
Mm.
our own like internal structure is aware that something is different because like the rest of us
Yeah.
is completely typical, right? But
Hmm.
it's like certain parts of our brain fire differently or misfire or whatever, and but the other part is very aware that that part's misfiring, and so there's like this internal guilt thing going on, and whenever I'm super sensitive to it now. If anybody feels like they need to shame me or guilt me or like uh, prod me to do something, and I'm just like, listen up, fucker. Like, you will not
Yeah.
say those things to me because it's already happening.
Yeah. What's
Like,
that?
I'm already doing your job, buddy.
Yeah. Take that. But yeah, to me, like, again, what kind of gets me about this whole statement is just this whole idea that, yeah, like it's how we're needing to struggle with like trying to understand like such a what you would think would be such a like a basic function of our existence and
Yeah,
experience, which is like our own mind. But they're like, oh, we're still just making attempts to kind of explain like this wonderful design that God made. What's first of all, like even just the whole concept of things like ADHD or autism or like the whole range of neurodivergencies is I mean, speaking like looking in like the whole span of human existence, this is something that we just discovered like 5 minutes ago, you know.
yeah,
So like how many millennia was God letting us just kind of fumble around thinking that it's like, oh,
dude.
you're just being sinful or that's a demon actually. And
How many
yeah.
of the like horribly impoverished people in the Bible were neurodivergent and had mental health problems? And
Hmm.
like if you had a physical deformity of any kind, and let alone let alone any kind of like obvious like mental health challenge, from the outside, you weren't allowed to enter the temple. Like as a
Yeah.
Jew, like God shunned you. And so in
Hmm.
this article, it talks about love and
Yeah.
acceptance of God, and I'm like, woman, I don't know if you've read the Bible. Because like Old Testament God seemed to be like nearly all about, like all the things you're saying that he isn't. Like
Yeah. 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 Which
for
again,
thousands of years. Like if somebody was super depressed and they couldn't like work to support their family, even though they
mhm,
desperately wanted to, their brain wouldn't let them because it was
mhm.
just like turning off or something and making them go like I've had days like that where I just like have to sleep all day. And um and I hate that. Like it's super hard not to hate yourself for like not doing something that's important to you, you know?
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, but then you also got to consider, and this is something else I think when we talk about just like society as a whole and how it treats it, it's like, and this of course varies from society from to society, but it's like societies will be set up to favor like a relatively narrow set of brain function, essentially.
yeah.
So if the way your brain works falls outside of that, like again, like we call things like disorders or mental diseases or whatever, but it's really just brains that just work differently, and these just
Yeah.
don't happen to work as well with how we've decided that we're going to set society up. So for you, just like needing to take a nap for a day, I mean, that's just what you need. But unfortunately, which with the way we've set up like our culture and the way things work,
Yeah.
that's detrimental. Like again, it's not detrimental in any like sort of ultimate sense, but just in the context that we've set up, it's detrimental
Yeah.
to that. Yeah.
And it like just as like a side comment, like corporate culture and like even small businesses that are trying to like adopt corporate culture where they're like we care about our employees and like yeah sure okay maybe but right up until the point where you're like sucks to be you
Yeah.
like there's a
Mhm.
limit where the caring stops and after that it's pretty abrupt like the drop
Yeah.
off. Like when Erin, my wife, disclosed at work that she had ADHD and anxiety disorders, and now we're pretty sure also autism. Uh, she was in the middle of a performance plan, or whatever. It's basically what they give you like before they're going to fire you to make themselves feel
Mm-hmm.
better. They're like, let's see how much you can improve. Oh, so close, still fired. Like that's how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then they fired her after she disclosed she had disability. Like, made their decision hours to a day later. Uh, would have been
Mhm.
illegal if she hadn't already been on a performance improvement plan, a PIP, which makes it sound
Nice.
cute.
Well, it's better. Like where I work, we also have what are called like performance action plans. So those are PAPs, which is much better.
No, the pap smear is when they like, dude. I worked at a cleaning company once, and we cleaned the gynecologist's office.
Ooh,
Did you know they
probably not.
they they use wooden Q-tips? There's some cotton on the end, but still,
Yeah.
they're putting a fucking dowel rod up there, like, and they're like, "Oh, we'll
Oh,
send this right out to be examined." You're like, it looks like they put like ponies up on this thing with the stirrups and stuff. Like,
oh, the things you learn on the humanity.
yeah,
No one was
I had a lot of
expecting that.
different jobs. I cleaned.
Mm.
We also cleaned a proctologist's office.
Ooh,
Smelled like cigarettes, butts, and sadness.
that
It's like I think it
that
used to
sounds
be
about
another
right.
office where there was smoking in there, and then it became like a doctor's office, but it was like still the same wallpaper, and so it smelled a little bit like smoke, but also like butt.
Yeah, which I mean, honestly, when you think about it, if you're going to let any doctor smoke, like why not the proctologist? He's like, all right, drop
Seriously,
them. Yeah,
just looking
yeah.
at assholes all day long.
And then
Who
offers a cigarette to
I
the
always
patient
wondered
afterward.
who says like I like, yeah, sure, business end of a human being all day long. Like that's what I want. That's my dream job. Pay me all the money for that. Like, I don't.
Which, fun fact, which I swear we'll get back to the article here in a minute, but
I think this is a little like mental health break or something from the top.
yeah, because this article is supposed to help us focus on it. But anyway, so
That,
something I found out recently that I found super interesting, like uh, like the human body, like biologists will sometimes refer to as like you're essentially a tube with limbs. When you think about, like you got the tube that goes from like for your mouth all the way to your anus.
yeah.
But fun fact about that, like that tube and like that system is one of the first things that forms.
Uh huh.
And apparently this is even a way that different animals are classified, like as
I know
far
where
as
you're
like
going with this. Yeah.
which end of the tube develops
Right.
first. And like I guess there's a name for like certain animals where like the mouth end develops first, and a certain name for animals where the ass end develops first. Apparently, we fall under the ass end category. So apparently, at some point in like embryonic development, you are literally just an asshole, and that's how we begin life. So,
I thought you were
which
going.
which explains a lot.
I
But
thought you were going in the direction of I think it's all life on Earth, like all animals on Earth, have a common ancestor where like they ate and shit through the same hole.
I mean that
Like
makes
sea
sense, I
anemones
guess.
and
Yeah,
certain
yeah. Hmm.
like single cell kinds of things. There's like one way in, one way out, and
Hmm.
it's the same way.
Oh, life. Speaking of God's good design, there. So, what's
Yeah,
the next part in the article here? You're wanting you had it's like
the biblical perspective is where it just gets First, okay, I got to point out that like everything is pretty straightforward and apparently very easy for the author to communicate, up until we get to the biblical perspective, and there's just layers here, and even like one layer contradicts another, but slightly. It's more like in the implication there. There's the contradiction, um, and what stood out to you in that? Because I've got
Yeah. Now, I'll admit I haven't read through the whole thing like very thoroughly,
okay,
but yeah,
so
like I said, like today I was working pretty much right until it was time to start setting up for this, and then I
I hear you.
started setting up. So
Uh,
yeah.
All right, so a little summary. The article suggests viewing neurodiversity through a biblical lens, emphasizing diversity as part of God's plan. Yeah, okay, sure. And with various gifts and
Mhm.
limitations contributing to the common good. Okay, kind of all good there. If you're coming from that place. They're just distinguishing between fallenness and sinfulness, recognizing the behaviors related to neurodivergence as not inherently sinful, but may stem from human limitations. Okay, that's where I was starting to get like that's the summary of this section, and that's where I was starting to get like nervous. Like, oh, now we're taking a
Mhm.
turn where I'm gonna get really uncomfortable and angry. Maybe wasn't sure yet.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay,
Which
difference
yeah,
between
because
fallenness and sinfulness is problematic.
yeah, yeah, that was definitely something that stuck out to me. Yeah.
Because first of all, same thing, but
Yeah, because
imagining they're not
why did it's like why did we fall? Like where did the
sin.
fall come from? So
It's
so I don't know what she thinks the difference is.
how did humans sin
Yeah.
before we could? Sin hadn't entered the world yet. Like God hadn't created sin. Like did we create sin, or He created the potential for sin? But we're the ones who made sin be created. I don't. We're
Mhm.
co-creators with God. I don't. What?
Yeah. I don't
No,
know.
no, no. But the snake is a snake's fault. Never mind that the snake is a symbol of wisdom or death. In the culture, it was like both, and it depended on the
Yeah.
context. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a
Right.
whole other topic. But uh, yeah, snake, not the devil.
Mhm.
Also, snake
Yeah.
could have been sharing wisdom, and then Adam and Eve were like, presupposition, let's roll.
Yeah. Plus, I've also heard you could definitely make the argument that the snake was the only character in that story that never lied.
Oh, I think you absolutely can. Yeah.
Hmm. So, but yeah, so yeah, there's this. So first of all, like this part that's up on screen now, talking about like diversity. Like I love it. Diversity isn't some progressive 21st century American idea. Like I feel like that's some sort of like subtle dig at like modern progressivism. But maybe I'm reading a little too much into
Maybe,
that.
but I also could that title could also be offensive to some people who are like diversity, anything is bad. Like
Right.
uniformity is God's plan. Like men are men, women are women, dogs are dogs, and sheep are sheep. And like,
Yeah. Which again, like I mean, that's the problem with trying to view the Bible as like monolithic and like the phrase we've said multiple times, like harmonization is the enemy of the truth because the Bible actually is so diverse in this way, but not in the way that she would want to think. The
yeah,
people like the author here when they talk about diversity in the Bible, so like it's univocal and accepting diversity because like but the thing is
false.
there's so the Bible itself is so diverse, like some of it embraces diversity, sure, other parts are like don't you dare marry anyone that's not a Jew and
Yeah, and
things like that
in
and
general, Old
only and of
Testament,
course only men are going to be in charge and like you can yeah don't accept
because we
stuff from
hadn't
other cultures and
because we
yeah
hadn't discovered that like women are actually more the complete human being. Men have that Y chromosome, which is like basically like
mm,
tells the X how to mutate, like the X chromosome how to mutate. Like
yeah. Yeah. And also, apparently, the Y chromosome. Now we're talking about on a scale like millions of years here, but apparently they're saying it's very possible that it's looking like it's kind of on its way out. Like it will like eventually disappear. Like
No, it
that'll be
makes total
interesting.
sense when you see how many people, like when they are themselves, apart from any kind of like cultural or societal framework, they're trans, or
Mm.
like any other form of queer. Like
Hmm.
there's just, yeah, it,
Yeah.
it it just makes sense, and I think it's speeding up.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that would automatically. It seems like something that would automatically happen when a society doesn't need uh, testosterone humans running around and wanting to punch things and be angry. Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
because if
For
there's
real.
nothing that needs to be punched or angry at for the sake of survival, that it becomes a liability pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
For sure. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. But also, speaking of like chromosomes, apparently, if Jesus truly was the result of a virgin birth, and that means like he was only born from the genes of a woman, so that meant
yeah,
he had no Y chromosome. So if he identified as male, then that means Jesus was trans.
but
So
then, but we don't. Maybe that's making an assumption, because we don't know what God's ghost penis, Holy Ghost penis, like does. Does God have like a G chromosome or something? Like what
gave her the G.
gave her the G? Gave her the G without the big O because he's a dick.
I like where that went.
I also think it's funny that calling anybody the P word with the USSY on the end,
Yeah.
is is like, it's not okay, right? That's offensive, but like it's still completely
Mhm.
fine. We all agree it's completely fine to call people a dick. Like that makes sense and offends no one. You know,
Yeah. Like,
everybody's like, "Oh, I get it. Makes absolute sense. Just look at it." I mean,
I mean, yeah.
that thing's out to hurt people. Come on.
Yeah. And I think it was Betty White who said it was also ironic that like we use pussy as like a, well, there, I just said it, but as like an insult, meaning like someone's like weak. But he's like, think about it, like what, like she said like several things, but end of it like those things can take a pounding.
When she was on Craig
True.
Ferguson's late night show years ago, um, she was on there a lot, like 20 times or something. And the
Nice.
two of them would always just like ad lib back and forth. Sometimes she would bring like visual aids or something. And so this was like around Obama, this is after his election, but she brought an election poster with her face on it, and it said "White Power," and the joke was, first of all, the image of her face with the phrase "White Power" under it, because it's her last name, and then she was like, I don't understand why there's a problem, and he was like trying to break it to her that like she's been horribly racist. And then even when he convinced her that like it could be seen as horribly racist, she's just like, "Oh, come on. Nobody's going to think that."
Right. Right. Right.
But he's getting the biggest kick out of like on
Oh yeah.
CBS putting up a big thing, "This is White Power," with Betty White's face on it. And that's the only reason they're able to get away with it. I swear
Uh-huh.
they had like a conversation beforehand, because he had this big
Mhm.
thing of like, what can't I say on TV unless it's in this very specific circumstance. Like he would
Uh-huh.
offer a rusty trombone to guests, which is a sex act, and it was fine to say that as long as he pulled out a rusty trombone when he said it. Like, and he'd go, "Care for a
Uh,
rusty trombone?" And they'd be like, "What?" And then he'd go, "I got it right here."
oh, and now I'm just thinking of, so he's a he's deceased now. But there was a famous football player for the Packers and the Eagles, I think, named Reggie White.
That sounds, yeah.
Yeah, but he was black. So I'm just
Hmm.
thinking how hilarious it would be for him to have a sign with his face that said "White Power."
Yeah, yeah.
That's making me laugh. But anyway, all right. So, all right, where were we? What next on the article? So we got.
So we got the biblical perspective, and it's full of they got like the appeal to biblical authority, and which is a logical fallacy, meaning that like it's not whatever point they're trying to make isn't automatically true based on how it's presented. Like it could be true, but the reason that is presented is not one of those reasons that is true.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Um, yeah, got some confirmation, but there's just like all kinds of stuff in here that like, um, if you're not a Christian, problematic. If you're trying to convince anybody who's not already a Christian, if somebody is already
Mm-hmm.
into circular logic and they just want to be kept in the fold, and that's why they're reading this, um, very well written for that purpose. Um, so
Yeah.
the fallenness and sinfulness thing we already said was a little like goofy. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I was
it's
looking at that section now. I was like, I definitely have some thoughts on this, but yeah.
I don't know how. There's a lot of room. Okay, first of all, there's a lot of room for interpretation. Like what is fallenness, what is sinfulness. That's not really pointed out. So it doesn't solve the problem of people putting their own assumptions or presuppositions about sinfulness or what is bad for humans um, on this other person. There's no how to distinguish like. So there's a happy feel good message from the Bible that she quotes, but then there's nothing like, okay, how do we know what's fallenness and what's sinfulness now that you've made this important distinction? She just goes on to
Mm-hmm.
say like, oh, you need to make that determination, and it's super important, and and like getting it
Yeah.
wrong is bad for everyone. Moving on.
Yeah. So, all right. So I'm going to bring up the article again, cause like, so I'm on the
Yeah.
section on distinguishing between fallenness and sinfulness. So first of all, I just want to point out this sentence because the way I read it, it made me laugh. Where it says, "We need forgiveness for our sin and rebellion through repentance." Now, the way that was written is, "We need forgiveness for our sin and rebellion through repentance." But the way I read it was, "We need
Hmm.
forgiveness for our sin and rebellion through repentance." Now, I don't know what rebellion through repentance means, but it sounded pretty fun.
Let's do it. I think I've done that before.
So, so that tickled me. But what other
What
thing I
about
want to point out is actually
the
right.
weakness? Like phrasing neurodivergence stuff as weaknesses. That's
Yeah,
offensive,
because
or potentially offensive.
yeah, like I said, like confusing brokenness or weaknesses with sinfulness, which again, coming from where I know folks like the Gospel Coalition are coming from, where like any sort of like brokenness or weakness or non-goodness we have in the world, it's all because of sin. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to me that she's trying to make this distinction. It's almost as if, and you see this a lot in like Christianity, especially the more fundamentalists, the way they try to kind of tap dance around stuff. It's like they realize how terrible that sounds to say, "Yep, like
Yeah.
your kid who's autistic, that's because of sin." It's like they realize that even though based on their worldview, I mean, that's what it is. But they were like, well, apparently we can't just say that to people. But if it's the truth, why not? But then they're like, well, we got to figure out these other ways to word it. And like,
It's when
so it
somebody is
just,
nearly aware of their cognitive dissonance.
mm-hmm, yeah. Yeah.
They,
It's like you
they've,
can tell
they've
there's
noticed something
definitely,
is there that's a threat, and they have to explain it away.
mm-hmm, yeah, because yeah, it's like there's definitely at least like a part of their brain that realizes, oh, that's kind of fucky. We should maybe try
You're like,
to
oh, I don't like how that
address.
feels.
It's like, oh, people get angry when I say that, but yeah. And it
Well,
doesn't seem to bring people love and peace and all the things that the gospel is supposed to bring people. So maybe that's,
uh,
yeah.
well,
Mm-hmm.
there's a bigger
Yeah.
question of is it leading to those things? Because like,
Mm-hmm.
sure, a lot of good things immediately, um, especially if it's a paradigm shift or something like that. Super uncomfortable and feels bad. Some might even say evil. But
Mm.
if you take a step back and you say, okay, is it really those things? Where might it really be going? And or truly be going, or just, like whatever word makes your brain take a step back and like look at an even bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
the bigger picture, if there is a God, is always going to be closer to God's perspective because
Mm.
she, they, I'll say they have the biggest picture.
You would think. Yeah.
And by that point, pronouns just don't even make any sense for, like, what's some
Right.
combination of they and it? Like, that?
That, I like it. Well, I'm going to start calling God that now. Let's see what people think of that. But yeah, but then another thing that kind of stuck out is like the part. So right before that sentence that I just highlighted, okay, where it says here, like, so autistic meltdowns and ADHD impulsivity are often related to dysregulation and not willful sin. Again, well, it's not willful sin. Okay, so it's
Ooh.
still sin, apparently.
Wait, okay, so
But
wait, willful sin is sin. Maybe like not willful sin, just automatic sin is fallenness. Is that the
yeah,
distinction?
I think that's the distinction she's really making.
Okay.
She's like, so where it's all sin, but she's kind of saying, well, here's the sin that you're doing on purpose, and here's a sin that you just can't help because it's your nature. So it's all still sin, but again, they're
And all
just
still very
realizing,
fluid based on interpretation.
yeah. Oh, yeah, for
Now,
sure.
I will say that, like, so meltdowns, impulsivity, dysregulation, and not willful sin. I was like, thank you, Christian lady, for saying the thing. Like, apparently, with some authority on the Gospel Coalition and whatnot, like that. I feel like the culture we came from in the mega church and the like the subculture and the prayer warrior stuff.
Mm.
Uh, It was like, okay, sure, it could be just dick regulation. It could be just dysregulation.
And
Uh,
and dick regulation. That's important too.
or it could be willful sin, generational sin. Who knows?
Mm.
Really? So, sure, go to the doctor, maybe take medication, probably don't. Like, that was the angle, right? It's like,
Yeah.
if you need medication, then it's good for you. The implication being, do you need it? That's the implied question. And no, never. Oh fuck! Like this is one of those things where like never say that to somebody going to a doctor for a neurodivergent / mental health thing, and they're talking to their doctor, and it's like, how fucking dare you get in between that person and their doctor and say, do you really need medication? It's like, do you really need to
Right.
fucking talk
Yeah.
right now? Like, did you really need
Like,
to have an opinion?
do you really need my foot up your ass? I think you do.
Like
Um,
seriously, like what?
mm-hmm.
It's like if you were really like, I just want to I'm waiting for the opportunity for someone to be like, I'm really concerned about your salvation or whatever. Because there are, I am gonna, I am gonna hang out with a couple
Mm-hmm.
mash guys. I'm gonna initiate
Ooh.
it, so like make it super awkward. Apparently, I have this like spiritual gift right now, if you can call it that, of like making people disoriented. Erin pointed that out last night because I was just asking her questions or like talking to her. She was in a thought loop, and
Mm-hmm.
just like running a program. And for some reason, like I'm like aware of that now when somebody is just like running a program that keeps them in circles in their brain. And then I ask a question to like asking them a question as if they're looking at it from another, like a wider perspective.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, she said it. And she's like, I don't even, are we having the same conversation? What is happening? And I was like, you said this, I said this next. That makes sense to say next. Like, she's like, I know, but I don't. I said, is it disorienting? And she said, Yeah, and I got a big grin on my face because for some reason, like the iconoclast in me is just like, yeah, break
Mm.
everything.
Oh, fuck yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love breaking the unhelpful stuff where it's
Yeah.
just obvious that like you're having a conversation with somebody's loop and not really them. Do you know that
Mm.
feeling?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Like with their bias or with their like fallacious assumption, or
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, that's when you feel like you're talking to an AI or something
Yeah.
that like has a limit in their programming, or maybe that's just me because I talk to
Hmm.
ChatGPT a lot.
Yeah. So you got that on your mind. Yeah. So, all right. So another sentence or concept or whatever I wanted to get to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
article here. So, where it says, so individuals may certainly cause or do wrong in these states,
sure,
but it's important to rightly name what's happening. Now,
great.
yes,
Tell me how.
it, it is important to rightly name what's happening. The problem is the basis from which folks like this are coming from. Like they're like what they consider rightly naming, like rightly naming according to what? Now, rightly naming according to like actual like psychological and medical science, yes, but what they're talking about is naming it according to like what the Bible says, which
All
is
right.
first of all, when it comes to neurodivergency, the only, like the closest thing the Bible really has anything to say about it is probably demons. That's
But not even like that direct. It's just like this narrative would lead you to believe that it's probably demons. We're not going to talk about it directly.
yeah. hmm Yeah. So, but because in her mind, it's like rightly naming is like it's trying to figure, oh, is this sin or isn't it? Like, okay, like so we've been kind of, I guess, in this whole conversation, and we kind of have to, based on like the article, just kind of granting, first of all, the fact that like sin as a concept is even a real thing, but 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 that's the problem when you just assume that it is and then try to make your world fit
Right.
in with that concept of sin. But what you should really is like, don't even assume sin is really a thing. Now look at your world. Like,
Yeah.
do you see it anywhere? Like in any certain situation, like, do you actually see sin here, or are you allowing yourself to just look at what actually is there? And based on the things that we actually have learned and figured out about the way reality works, and the way brains work, and the way human interaction works, it's like because there's really nothing when it comes to the neurodivergencies and like in types of behaviors that this article is talking about. It's like sin doesn't even enter into it. It's like a person is doing a thing because this is just how their brain is working. Now it may or may
Yeah.
not be a thing that they can work on. I hate the term fix or adjust, but
Yeah. Fixing is kind of an offensive term.
yeah, but I feel like the way it's looked at, if it is a behavior that you can actually like work on and adjust and actually change to like fit certain criteria or certain situations or whatever, I feel like oh well, you're able to change it. That means we can call that sin because I feel like if it's something you
Right,
feel like
because
you
the human
can't
mind isn't
change,
isn't
yeah,
uh, isn't plastic that way. It's not. There's no plasticity to it that way. Is the
yeah,
That's just ridiculous.
yeah.
I,
So let's
on
see, was
here where I just caught this now. Here, where go back up a little bit.
back up. Mm-hmm.
Where it says bad grades, tantrums, disorganization, inappropriate comments, relational conflict, and irresponsibility may all be because of willful sin. No. Okay, if a kid is having all those things happen, or an adult, something else is happening. Those are all symptoms that something else is happening, and it's probably a neurodivergent thing. Probably, it could be anything. That could be depression. That could be ADHD. That could be autism. It could be a combination of all those. Like,
Yeah,
so
and
if all those things are happening, that's a serious indication that it's not what you would call sin. Like this is a more like systemic complication.
yeah, and but I mean, look at the things that it's calling sin, like bad grades. Like, how are bad grades sin? How is
No,
How is disorganization
yeah.
sin? Like,
Oh fuck. Yeah.
or like
Inappropriate comments. That's what
relational conflict. Like that
that's
just
called being a
happens.
person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Inappropriate comments. That's how kids like learn.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. And appropriate according to who?
yeah.
According to your like prudish ass, who's like can't like stand here and people use the word fart, which is like how I grew up. It's like,
No, that's another good
yeah,
catch. That's a really loaded sentence.
yeah, or like I mean, I wasn't allowed to say butt, like as far as like referring to your posterior. Like I
Yeah, we
wasn't even
couldn't
allowed to
say
say,
suck. We couldn't say the word suck
yeah,
for a little bit because it's like, well,
oh
clearly
yeah,
they're sucking genitals. We're
mm.
like, no, it just means like I don't like this. I think it's bad.
Yeah. It's one of those words that like it's like the word cool. Like I don't know
Yeah,
where that like when we say like something's cool, like is it when like we like it? I don't know where that came from.
I think
Which
it
first
came
of all,
originally from like Black Americans. I think it was part of a jazz culture slang.
mm, which
You know,
you
white
think like
people will
in
take
America.
anything black people did and make it worse.
Right, which I mean, I guess that makes sense if it came from black culture, because I mean, you think of anything in American culture that is cool, it
Mhm.
probably came from African Americans.
No, that's a very good point.
So,
I heard
yep.
a funny comment from some white middle aged women today on a podcast called Hysteria that I watch, and hysteria was
Uh,
what was called when a woman was having reasonable emotional reactions to things, and like
hmm
the solution to
Yeah, yeah.
hysteria was a penis because of course it was in the Middle Ages. Like she's
Uh-huh.
hysterical. Clearly, she hasn't been fucked well
Well,
enough. Like,
yeah.
but they were saying like they mentioned something. They said further proof that anything that straight white men are really into is bad.
I mean,
Oh, that feels really true.
if any of our viewers want to confirm or disconfirm that, feel free. But yeah,
Yeah, I don't. I'm upset that she didn't say that it could be willful sin, and it also could be neurodivergent diagnosis stuff. I don't like that that
yeah,
was left open like that. It's
yeah.
because whatever somebody's more comfortable with, that's the angle that they're going to see it with.
hmm
I think it needed to be more forceful, especially if they
hmm
awfully move people away from a sinful angle. If that, in her view, isn't what's happening, I don't think this framing does that. I also think it's just occurred to me that this author has an editor at the Gospel Coalition, and
hmm
this sounds like a softening, maybe, of her original point.
Mm. Oh yeah. Trying to
Um,
rein her in a little bit. Well, I mean, she is a
yeah,
woman. You gotta keep her in
it's like you
check.
got to make it 50
Yeah.
50. We can't just say it's probably this because who are we to say it probably is anything except the Bible? It's probably the Bible.
Oh, faux show. But like yeah, another phrase here where it says like it also made baby due to human limitation. It's like
Okay, that's
everything is due to human limitation, though, if you want to call it that.
yeah. I can't fart rainbows because that's not how butts work. Like,
Well, or who knows? Maybe since rainbows, it's all completely dependent on like the visual light spectrum and how our eyes process it. Who knows? Maybe there's some creature out there who
oh
like
no,
they
that's
can
true.
see on some version like the way their eyes function. They can
Like
see certain
infrared.
wavelengths.
Yeah.
So maybe if when we fart, maybe to some creatures it does look like rainbows.
No,
We
on
don't know.
like an IR camera, you can see like the warm gases coming out like a plume of fire. I've seen it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty of animals that can see in infrared or sense infrared, in some manner, and so yeah. I
Like
don't see why not. So I
migratory
choose to
birds
believe.
are animal compasses. That's nuts too. They've got
Yeah.
like some chemical in their body that can tell which way is north, and they know
Hmm.
what to do with that because of DNA.
Yeah.
How? Come on, people don't. If people had that ability, we've evolved like to the point where our conscious brain is like, I know what's going on, and they're like, yeah. How'd you make poop? Like, I don't know. It just does that. Like, you're like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because when you
smart
think
ass.
about it, yeah. 'Cause when you think about it, we tend to think of like humans as like, the ultimate. Well, I guess some people, like particularly Christians, we will tend to think as humans of like, as like we're like the pinnacle of creation. I mean, look at how well designed. But it really, like you think about our advantages, basically come down to just like the size of our brains and its capabilities, opposable thumbs,
Hmm.
and the way our like vocal tract is built, so we can like form words and sentences. That's really about it. Like we can't fly. Like there are plenty of other animals who like have better eyes than we do, have better hearing than we do. Like you said, have different senses, like being able to sense north and like like all kinds of animals can eat and digest so many more things than we can.
Yeah,
And yeah,
I
and
mean,
that left to like natural causes don't die in childbirth as much as humans are prone to do.
yes.
You know,
That's an excellent point. Like it's weird that we're the dominant species on the planet when like it's super easy for people to die during childbirth. Like,
yeah.
so we're not amazing at having lots of offspring without dying or having lots in the first place, and
Yeah.
like
'Cause,
long
yeah, we only have
gestation
one. We
periods.
only have one. Yeah, we only have one at a time. Well, typically one at a time. Like more than one at a time is pretty rare, at least relatively speaking. Like with like some other species who like, yeah, it's like the relative. It's a normal thing. It's like give birth to multiple at once. This is kind of what they do.
Yeah, 6 kids
But
all at
yeah,
once. Let's.
yeah, like that's like I call it. A litter of puppies. It's because yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah,
like
we don't.
rabbits have like shit tons of offspring, and
Mhm.
I tell you what, if they
Yeah,
had
so
thumbs, we'd all be rabbits right now.
yeah. Well, that's another thing I've heard. Like with comparing different animals, they said like dolphins, their brains like are
Hmm.
kind of on par with ours, if not surpassing ours. They said
Yeah,
basically
it's like
if
wrinkles
dolphins,
to mass ratio is the thing.
yeah, they
Like the
basically said if dolphins, like with their brains, if they had our bodies, like they would be the dominant species, like not us.
yeah.
But then also I've heard that if raccoons with their bodies, if they had human brains, they would be like far more advanced.
Oh yeah,
They
yeah.
I don't know why they singled out raccoons in particular, but apparently,
They have thumbs. That's what
yeah.
it is.
I mean, but there's other animals that do too. But maybe there's some other things about their anatomy and whatever. But
Yeah, I think it's
and
like hind
they got
leg
the good
stuff.
night,
Yeah,
yeah, and they got the good night vision. I think so. That probably helps too.
yeah.
So
Dolphins can. I don't know if they've proven it, but just through like people's like experiences where they were injured, had some broken bones, and the dolphins knew exactly what area to avoid while they like carried them to another boat or to the shore.
hmm.
Like the dolphins knew the best place to take the person, and they like carried the person, avoiding their broken leg. And so there's a theory that like maybe with their sonar, they're able to like tell where there's a separation in the bones there wouldn't normally be
Hmm.
because sound waves will penetrate
Huh?
below the skin.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Fascinating.
yeah, yeah. Let's go back to this lady. What's.
All right. What any particular section you wanting to touch on next, or
Let's scroll down a little bit and see what happens.
okay, so here's where I believe this is where we left off here with the distinguishing between fallenness and sinfulness.
It was an appeal to authority where she's like, C.S. Lewis said this, so it must be true because he's
Yeah,
Paul or something. And
yeah. Yeah. Let's look at what old Clive said here. 'Cause people don't know that's what the C in C.S. Lewis stands for. It's Clive. The S is for Staples. For staple. I don't remember if it's
I
apparently it
think
was a
it's
family name.
I think it's Staples with an S on the end.
Yeah,
All right.
he had a passion for office supplies. So
All right, so
Him
good
and Mitt
old
Romney. They're like this.
good old Staples says bad psychological material is not sin but a disease. It does not need to be repented of, but to be cured. Oh, that's offensive, C.S. Lewis. Some of
Hmm.
us who seem quite nice people may, in fact, have made so little use of a good heredity and good upbringing that we are really worse than those whom we regard as fiends. What is he saying? This sounds very prejudiced, actually. Why
Yeah.
is
Wait, like what good heredity? Like, I mean, I know like what he probably meant by that is maybe not what we would read, but maybe it was,
good
and he just didn't real.
upbringing?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, this is kind of breakthrough for his time period. Like,
Yeah. So I'll give him that for sure. Yeah.
but to be cured, oh no, it's another way to be human. Like, how are you gonna
Right.
fix their DNA? It's just it's another way
Yeah.
to be human, which can be very different than like the typical way of being human, and therefore we should be compassionate towards those people and say,
Mhm.
how can we work together instead of
Yeah.
how can we get the neurodivergent people to fit in with the neurotypical? Like,
Right. Yeah. And
like
this goes back to what we were talking
because
about before.
they
Yeah.
can't just blend in and do the things. That's the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
the
That's the point.
neurotypical
Yeah.
people need to reshape how they do things because they can. Like there's a much lower bar, like a much lower limit, like where neurodivergent people. This is different for all, like anybody in that category, but there's like a cap of like they can have coping mechanisms to a certain point, but then there is a cap that like beyond that they need assistance. And any neuro any neurodivergent person needs assistance in some way, not always a lot. Sometimes it's a little, sometimes it's just understanding is the only
Mm.
assistance they need. But
Hmm.
there's varying levels, and making an assumption about what kind of assistance they need, especially they need to be cured, because if you change somebody's mental makeup, like they're going to be a different person. So like when you say like curing somebody of their neurodivergency, like you're saying making them someone else. They
Yeah.
cease to exist as them. That
Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
yeah, not
Yeah.
okay.
Yep. Yeah. And this goes back to like what we were talking about earlier, as far as like the way we look at neurodivergencies. Now, some things in what we would call like more extreme examples. Okay, so yeah, that's a hindrance to how this person is living. Like this is something that if we can try to help adjust, we need to. But like
Right.
also just evaluating like how much of it is just the way we have, for whatever reasons, decided to structure our society and culture, and how much of it is, and so yeah, so when my brain totally lost how I was connecting that thought to what we were talking about. Well, yeah, when it talks about yeah, curing, yeah, something like to be cured, it's like it's when we think about okay, there are certain people who perform well in society as we built it, and certain people who don't. So when it comes to solving this problem of certain people not fitting in the ways other people might, it's like we just kind of defaulted to, well, the solution is obviously to try to change the people, but like
Right. Instead of
yeah,
meeting in the middle. Yes.
yeah, or like what, because think about it, like which, I mean, and I know like think like on paper and in reality things can definitely be very different, but to me like on paper it seems like between the two options of which is easier to change, society, which is something we just completely made up anyway, or the way people are literally genetically wired, like which of those two sounds easier to change?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like you can just change somebody can just change how they respond to other people who they either know are neurodivergent or uh,
Mm-hmm.
seem to be. Like it's never a bad idea to say like help me help you in a genuine way instead of
Yeah.
it's like I want you to help me screw you over. Like that that's normally how that actually works.
Uh-huh.
It's like tell me the best way to make myself feel better while I screw you over.
All right. Yeah. So I'm just kind of scrolling through this article to see if there's anything else that stuck out to me. Like I said, I mean, I apologize. I didn't read as much of this as I probably should have before we, did a whole
Yeah,
fucking
no,
show
that's right.
about it. But
there was
because
there,
clearly this means this wasn't important to me,
well,
doing my own show that I do every
yeah,
week,
right.
with my buddy. Clearly not important to me at all because
So she goes on, and I think this is where she kind of makes a transition into oh, but love people is the important thing, and
let's see. Oh yeah,
kind of like
the
wanted,
love the neurodivergent. Well, here I'll put that back up here. So yeah,
yeah.
you talk about this. I need to get another beer. There, back.
So I found it entirely ironic that she says make no assumptions, um, and like clearly there are assumptions that have been made throughout this whole article so far. One, a lumping. She seems to be talking mostly about ADHD and autistic people. However, neurodivergent includes basically anyone with a mental health challenge, anxiety, depression. It could bipolar, like all anything that isn't what would be considered a typical brain. That's what's included. Like learning disabilities, which isn't just a learning disability challenge. There's massive. There can be massive like social hurt that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
Authority figures in school like
Oh yeah,
treating you like you're stupid. And also, I don't think this
yeah.
happened earlier. She makes a comment and she refer. I think it was in the very beginning, and this is where I immediately doubted her street cred because she used the term high functioning or higher functioning, and
Mm-hmm.
that is offensive to people who are considered high functioning uh, autistics or ADHDers because we're all functioning at our highest capacity. So to say somebody is a lower functioning human being or like a lower functioning human with
Mm.
autism, like human beings will do their best. Like you are getting that person's best always because we're just wired to
Mm-hmm.
survive and we
Right.
survive by putting our best out there. So just because it's not what somebody else might consider our best in that moment, it is our best in that moment.
Yeah. And
Doesn't
again, like,
mean things. It doesn't mean there can't be improvement, or like maybe like if we're mistreating someone or being rude or something, with autism or ADHD, like sure we can like try to adapt and like we don't typically want to hurt anyone. So and at the same time, like I'm
yeah.
going to say things that sound rude or callous, like or racist or sexist, and I'm not, and I didn't mean it to be, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. So I
And
was seeing if I could find the part in the article where she said that, but I couldn't. But
I
yeah,
think it was like the
doesn't matter. The
first two
point is,
paragraphs.
yeah. But
And
yeah, I mean, the point is like she used the term high function, but again, it's like okay, high function, like relative to what?
yeah,
And again, like this goes back to comparing like the people and the society. Like, is it the people who are not high functioning, or is it the society that's not functioning properly to accommodate for the people?
yeah. Is it not a high
I
functioning
think
society? Yeah.
yeah, I think maybe that's what we should start doing is taking all these terms that we're using to refer to people. Like maybe
Ooh,
we
yeah,
need to flip that around and start applying these terms to society. Like, is society high functioning? Is society dysfunctional? Does society need cured? You know,
yeah,
things like that.
yeah.
I'm
Like
all
instead
for
of
that.
saying someone is in poverty, we say we have a poverty problem, or you know what I mean?
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that's really good. We need to I don't know
Yeah, yeah.
what kind of hashtag we need for that. Like, you people in the audience, I can see you watching. Do you have any? If you want in on this, yeah.
Then they stop watching because they're like,
Nope, they're still on there. I see you.
so there, yeah, she goes into
There's a
practical
little number
application.
next to that eyeball. So,
The complexity of souls, whatever that means, that concept she gets into, the deep and often invisible motivations and behaviors, avoiding harmful assumptions after assumptions have already been made in the article. Um,
hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
mean, this,
also, I'm sorry, for people, I'll put with the article we're talking about. I'll
yeah,
Here, I'll go ahead and post a link in the comments if people want to look. But I'll also I forgot to add it to the description um, of the episode because people noticed we had like a quick little kind of misfire because I realized I had updated like the description from the previous stream that was going on here, but then realized, oh, it didn't save. So yeah, so there I just posted the link to the article in the comments here. Like I said, I'll after the stream tonight, I'll go back and put it in the description so if people want to read that. But yeah.
so all right, so she kind of already talked about this, but they like embracing diversity. I think it's laughable to say that like Old Testament God embraced diversity. It's like conform or be killed was modus operandi for that God for the most part. Like it was unusual if that God was loving and accepting of everyone. Like
Yeah.
there were some prophets who went that angle, but like overall, they were weirdos in the Old Testament. um,
Hmm. Yeah.
so okay, loving the neurodivergent, making no assumptions, avoid judging or with drawing from neurodivergent individuals. That's really helpful, but she did make assumptions already herself, kind of making very
Hmm.
broad general statements about the neurodivergent people.
Yeah. Here, I got that section up. I'll put that back up here. Yeah.
So this was uh, like
Oh, and real
pretty.
quick, this is got to be a first. Like usually this far into the episode, we're usually like losing viewers, but I don't know. Like we're actually more people are watching now than were before.
We're
So
building
you're out there,
steam.
folks. Yeah. So yeah, like leave a comment or something, folks. Let us know you're out there. We definitely want to know your thoughts, and make sure also let us know if you can actually read this well and if you're following along. So yeah.
So making no assumptions, seeking understanding, and showing genuine love. Those are all great things.
Mm-hmm.
However, it hasn't been modeled extremely well because there were assumptions made so far. With the huge variety of the spectrum of neurodivergent people, there's uh, other than just like generally healthy things about how humans can interact, like you can't get into like real details because um, later she goes into like being direct and like um,
Mm-hmm.
truthful with people, and like that can work really well with some autistic people and ADHDers. But I'll tell you what for anybody who's neurodivergent, and like somebody correct me if I'm wrong, um, but it seems like we all just want people to be genuine and authentic. Like I would rather if someone's actually an asshole, like I would rather them just be actually an asshole, and now I know how to respond accordingly instead
Mm-hmm.
of like pretending to be nice. Like that's I just don't know what to do with that because I want to like
Yeah.
respond like I know
Mm-hmm.
like I can feel what's behind like when I can feel that like aggression or whatever that's behind the niceties. Like I want to respond to the aggression because I can tell it's there.
Right.
um,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
but
Give
then
me.
I
Yeah.
have to like play the same game they're playing. Like, oh, let's all be fake nice, and then I'm like, gross, gross, gross. I need to go stim in a corner for a minute. Like,
Yeah. Right. Because, and this is something I've like, again, as I've been learning more about myself, and I probably have, several undiagnosed neurodivergencies, like, and I feel weird. Like, I almost feel like I shouldn't say them by name just because I don't know for sure. I don't know because I feel like some people like, well, if I just say, well, I have this, but other people like, you don't know for sure. And like I feel like that's maybe a thing with
no,
some
self
people. I don't
diagnosis
know,
is totally a
but
thing because who wants who wants to be autistic or who wants to have ADHD? Like,
Yeah.
it's.
Well,
I'm
I
not
feel like
saying
maybe some
you know
people
what I
are
mean. Like,
sensitive.
that's not really something
Yeah.
people like pretend to have.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess to me, maybe what it feels like is like I don't want to feel like, well, I don't know for sure. So I'll just put it out there. Like I'm fairly certain I'm at least somewhat autistic. Like that seems to make a lot of sense of a lot of like yeah, just the way my brain works basically, and the way I kind of function in like social interactions. Because like part of it is like I almost feel like okay, so here's the thing I've recently realized that I do. This is at least my name for it, but the more I think about like all my social interactions, I'm realizing it's actually more pervasive. I feel like I'm actually doing this more often than I'm not, and that's what I like to call manufacturing genuine responses.
Yeah,
If that makes sense
yeah.
to you? So
Some people call that masking. Yeah.
yeah, so to me, what that looks like, you know, in like practical terms is so say like is like sharing something with me that's like some like super like traumatic or sad or like very like emotional experience that like and I'm like okay I'm his friend so I want to like be supportive but like as he's like sharing like what's going on like my brain is like fully processing it like holy shit this is fucked up like I feel so bad for you like that but it's like but when it comes to actually making like the outward expressions it's just like whatever part of my brain is in charge of actually making my body do stuff it's just like fuck that I'm still processing it so I feel like well I gotta say something so I'm like so I'm forcing myself to actually like physically like respond and react and say things so
Hmm.
but what I'm saying like it's not fake in the sense that I'm just like making it up or like
Yeah.
I'm trying to sound like I'm being sympathetic or empathetic, but I'm really not. It's like, no, I really am, but like my body is just not expressing that naturally. So I'm having to force myself to do it. But I've realized really in any, like, I guess I'm more hard pressed to find any social interaction where I actually am just acting completely naturally and not just, well, this is what I think people say during this kind of situation kind of thing, you know?
No. Yeah, I
So,
get that.
so
Yeah.
yeah. So,
I
and again, I totally lost where I was ultimately going with that, but that's the thing about me, I guess, if nothing else.
no. I no. I've been trying to focus on that that kind of thing where how do I if I know I'm feeling something like I can be aware that I'm feeling sad or anxious, but or it's more like a knowing that I must be, but I'm not really feeling it. Um,
Mm,
like because you might be kind of the same where like you and you know the kinds of things that like affect you, and then but doesn't affect you in the moment, and then you're like, oh, but I know me, and like somewhere I'm really feeling this way inside, and so I'm gonna like you know I want that to be on the outside because I don't want this person to be like, they're like, oh, I'm not happy I shared that with this zero response. And so yeah,
hmm
no,
Yeah.
that's I wouldn't call that masking. That's more like how do I get the inside on the outside when the connection isn't there?
Yeah. Because I
And
also know there have
yeah,
been like so many times where like I've like reacted or said something that I assumed was like an appropriate response or appropriate thing to say in a situation, but like people have like react and like why did you say that? I'm like I don't actually know.
it's like, why do you
So,
think I said it?
yeah. So yeah, so basically what that leads to is like I'm essentially almost never like completely comfortable in any social interaction, like including with people I'm like super close with, like with you or like my kids or like other good friends or family. Like I still feel like yeah, it like unfortunately, like with people like you, and I think probably like understand like if I say something that sounds like way off, you're probably like, oh, that's just Tommy. He's trying. But,
I don't.
but
I don't. I think it's been a long time since anything like that's happened.
yeah, well, I think we're just like so used to each other now and like how we function. Like I think we just kind of almost intuitively, kind of automatically, oh, this is what. Yeah. So it's like it's not even like a conscious. Oh, this is what Matt
Yeah.
means. Like my brain just automatically just kind of picks it up. Yeah. So apologies for the rest of you who aren't as familiar with us. We're like,
No,
what the fuck is wrong with these guys? Yeah.
I do find it really like the exact wrong thing to say at a particular moment. I think is hysterical. It's just like,
Oh yeah, there's sometimes where I definitely do know like I said, like I don't always know what the right thing to say is, but I definitely a lot of times know exactly what the wrong thing to say would be. So and it's like how
yeah,
like but like that's a kind of like a trick your brain does sometimes is like it's like telling someone don't look at this thing like they're automatically going to want to look at the thing. So like with my brain is like, okay, I know this would be like the exact wrong thing to say, but then my brain's like, well, I'm not coming up with the correct thing to say, so this is the only thing to say that's in my brain right now. So it's like it's hard to keep it from just popping out. So
have you watched
cool.
John Oliver's show last week tonight or this week tonight?
Yeah.
I think it's last
I've
week
seen
tonight.
Yeah, I've only seen a few like full episodes of that, but
Well, he is just absolutely tickled by like like just absurd things. Like he playfully sort of like dared a municipality to name I forget what exactly happened, but there's a sewage treatment plant in some city in the United States named the John Oliver Sewage Treatment Plant, and just because it was like a feud that like he started for fun with this one municipality in the country, and then they like realized what it was, that it was just like for fun and goofy and stupid, and so they responded in kind and it escalated, and so like as like a compliment slash insult they they named their sewage treatment plant after it.
love it.
No, but it's like, for example, he offered $1 million to um, Ginny Thomas, Clarence Thomas's wife, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas,
Mhm.
if she could, because apparently they're really into money and gifts and not quite
Mm.
bribes in quotes,
Mm. Mhm.
luxury vacations, luxury Winnebago, and all that. And so he offered her $1 million if she were to I think it was if she were able to convince Clarence to retire. And I think it was like $1 million a year, like ongoing.
Wow.
And it
Man,
was, and
what do I got to do to be in the position where I'm in such a position of importance that I can fuck up so much that someone just offers to pay me $1 million a year to stop? I need to figure
seriously.
that out. Yeah. But real quick, so got a comment here. Wanted
Ooh,
to highlight. First of all, it's a good comment, but also I super appreciate who it's coming from. So, Matt, I don't know if you're familiar with Rackets and Drapes, the band.
no.
They were like going back to like high school, like one of my favorite bands. They were as far as
No
like
way.
stylistic, yeah, as far as like stylistically, they kind of go under the umbrella term shock rock. A lot of people compared them to like Marilyn Manson, but they were actually like quite a bit heavier and
Wouldn't be
like
hard.
would have
Manson was
yeah.
opposed.
Yeah, because I remember like because people would like compare like because I actually got into them before I got into Manson because this is back in my Christian days when I was only allowed to listen to Christian music, so like Manson was like right out for multiple reasons. But so I listened to these guys and they're like, oh, it's good and heavy, but they're like, oh, they're like Manson. But then I listened to Manson like, oh, real quick, oh, like oh. Right back at you. Yeah, for like, and if this is like one of the band members, let me know who this is who's on here. But so then I went back and listened to Manson. Like I'd heard like Beautiful People. It's like, okay, that's kind of heavy. But then I like heard the rest of his stuff. I was like, this is, I mean, it's still good for what it is, but like, this is not at all what I was expecting.
No,
But
it's
anyway,
aggressive. It's aggressive pop.
yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so yeah, super awesome to see you on the show. Oh, this is Kiffany. Awesome. Great to hear
Nice.
from you, Kiffany. So so yeah, but awesome point / rhetorical
Yes.
question. Dementia and Alzheimer's are also mental health issues as well. Is it a sin when they don't even remember 5 minutes ago?
No.
I mean, if you ask a Calvinist, yes, because according to a Calvinist, everything's a sin. But yeah, I mean, because this is.
Have you ever had like a relative with Alzheimer's or dementia?
I have not. No.
You have to change your idea of what a social norm is, because like when somebody starts to get dementia, it becomes like a hyper focused version of their personality. So if they were mostly, at least that's how it was explained to me, is how I experienced it with my relatives. Was if my
apparently Kiffany has known someone as well. So
like my grandma was not a very nice person regularly, and fucked up all her kids. It was a mess. Short version of that is like their dad died and their mom like never talked about it, and so there was zero grieving process. They just moved on, like, oh, he's just gone now. And and she became downright mean like when her dementia started to progress. Yeah, it was yeah. But then
also,
you have
Tiffany like points out here, yeah, it depends on the dementia. Oh yeah,
that's very true. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. No, and stuff that you normally would have felt like you could have said, well, they're just being a jerk. It's like, well, no, they don't have real control over that. And then you're kind of like, but do we ever really have control over that? And you kind of have to unlearn stuff in order to continue to love this person.
Yeah.
Because normally you would just kind of like write somebody off if they're an asshole to you like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then this goes back to like how we were talking about, more recently we've been discovering more, if you want to call them issues, things we label as like neurodivergencies, mental health issues, or vascular dementia. That's something honestly not familiar with that, but I mean, yeah, it sounds brutal.
Sounds like limited blood flow to the brain, maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, let us know. But when it comes to like the more, like we're learning more about these things now, like however you want to label them. But as the woman in this article is like, you got to figure out like how to properly address it. Like, but you're trying to take all these things that we're just learning about now and address them from a context, from like all these things that were written thousands of years ago from people who had no idea what any of this stuff even was.
And that's a fallacy to project present knowledge into the past, or present context into the past.
Right. So that's why I think you see like in Christianity a lot, they'll use terms like, well, this is things we're wrestling with. It's, well, yeah, because you have to wrestle with it because you're choosing to take like the most backwards like route to trying to figure it out. Like where like it's like, oh, we can't just use science and like personal experience and the things people are going through right now. We also got to take it through the filter of this like shit that this guy named Moses, who probably didn't even exist, wrote, however fuck many thousands of years ago.
We got to process it through the lens of Iron Age fiction. Or myths.
Yeah. And then just the concept of sin and like trying to figure out how that fits into it as well. It's like, or you could just not start with the assumption that things are bad, things that we consider bad are sin, and we can just address it for what the hell it is.
Ask people what help they need. Yeah.
Yeah. So as Tiffany says, firsthand experience. Oh yeah. right as the pandemic hit, we were trapped at home with a family member who became someone who we didn't know.
That's a
That's
living
just rough
hell.
for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
terrible.
like I said, I haven't experienced that, but I have a friend, Richard, who you know, Matt,
Yeah,
Richard, who's also a fan of Rackets and Drapes. Um, like his, yeah, violent. Ooh, shit. Yeah,
damn.
but it's actually his
Man, what do you
mother-in-law.
even do? Shit.
Yeah, but yeah, it was yeah. So my friend Richard, like his mother-in-law, she's passed away now, but like before she did, she developed dementia, and like so they had like moved in with her, and I remember seeing like now like his wife, you know, her daughter, another friend of mine from high school, like been friends with both of them for well since high school. Um, but yeah, but just seeing like the things they were talking about, and like, but the way they were both approaching it, like they were like, you know, this is still, even
This
though
is
she
not
may
your
not be, yeah, I know,
birth.
but like they're like, okay, she may not be acting like the same person, but they're like, hey, this is still my mom, this is still my mother-in-law, you know, my wife's mother, and like this, but yeah, but just dealing with that whole, yeah, like of this, it's the same person, but it's not the same person. But it's like, but we still love this person either way, and yeah,
It's kind of like you have to serve the
yeah,
memory of the person, not
yeah,
current to them. I mean, at least that's
yeah,
how I was able to deal with it.
yeah. Like I said, it's not something I've experienced firsthand. You know, only very secondhand through others. But yeah,
It's
but yeah,
different
but
for
still,
everyone, I think. Like it's yeah, you get navigate your own way through it.
mm-hmm, yeah. Which again, this like so. I think that's one of the things. As much as this article that we're talking about tonight. Now, and again, as relatively, like I think good as a lot of the things in this article are, is it's like
Right.
it seems like it's definitely a step towards like an actual like healthy way to approach these sorts of matters.
Yeah, I agree with
It's
that.
still it still just shows like I mean I hate to use terms like this, or do I really? I don't. Okay, what I should say is I know it sounds better if I say that I hate to use terms like this. So I say, but to me, this just shows how regressive religion can be.
Yeah.
Because even in what looks like, especially for someone like the fucking Gospel Coalition, to be actually acknowledging, oh, maybe when my autistic kid is having relationship issues, that's not actually willful sin. It's like, thank you
Or
so
demons
fucking
or
much for,
possession
you
and
know, but still just the fact that they feel like they still have to put this in the context of, well, it's still obviously sin of some sort, so we got to figure out how
is
that
it
whole thing works.
theirs
Like,
or is it Adam's? You know, is it mine? Is it mine? Is it my generational sin?
no, that's
It's
it's
like
probably Eve, because she's the woman, so clearly that's, yeah,
the tradition we came from. It like if you had an autistic child, like I do, I have two. I'm autistic. My wife is probably autistic as well.
yeah, big happy
I
family.
think I think ADHD is autism. I think it's another branch of the spectrum or another end of it. That's my theory. Science
Yeah,
has yet to disprove me. In fact, it's kind of proving it. Um, but
yeah,
in our context, we came from the prayer warrior
hmm,
whatnots and like that. You would reflect on your own like quote
ooh,
unquote sinfulness. You know, like
yeah.
my kids are autistic. What did I do? You know?
Yeah. So now here's something from Kiffany here. Sin and sins are not the same. Now that's intriguing. So I'm so intrigued. I am now putting in the comments a link for Kiffany or anyone else watching. Like if you want to actually like hop on and join us in the conversation as we're kind of like wrapping things up here. Love to have you on. Yeah, just click on the link that I just posted in the comments. Yeah, because that's an interesting sentence
Yeah.
right there. So whether you want to like actually like hop on and chat with us or just continue commenting, I mean, I don't know if you're in a place where you can. So
So I
next time.
no,
All
that's
right.
interesting.
Well, we will definitely have you next time. So
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to
Yeah,
you. That'd be great.
definitely awesome.
Hmm.
All right, so I'll run with that, and maybe in the comment, like if I'm totally way
Yeah.
off, let me know.
Yeah. So,
So
yeah.
the so where I think that could be going is that like someone else's sins. Um, so the term generational sin, there kind of is something there, and maybe not in a spiritual way, but like if someone has an abusive parent or like a parent who's an addict or recovering addict or whatever, um, those do have impacts on kids or people in their lives. Like violence tends to replicate violence in other people's lives. Addiction, in the case of immediate family, tends to replicate in children. Um,
Mm.
and so, like the shortcomings or the challenges of adults can not just genetically, but because people act in dysfunctional ways, like it can kind of like perpetuate that. And like in my case,
Mm.
like my dad was an alcoholic, and he quit cold turkey because his brother who was dying asked him to, or told him he wanted him to,
Mm.
and hasn't had a drink since. Wouldn't even take painkillers, like potentially addictive painkillers, through
Oh
fucking
wow.
back surgery and
Shit.
through cancer, and like he was
Yeah.
like, no, give me Advil, and I was like, wouldn't even smoke weed, which is like would have potentially helped his cancer, which he passed away from. Um, and
Yeah.
well, it's kind of complicated. He passed away because of complication from chemotherapy or radiation, whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chemo, not radiation. Um,
Yeah.
Anywho, uh, I just anywho'd my dad's death. That's an issue. Uh, but no,
Hey,
there are things, and my dad
yeah,
was
don't
autistic.
feel
I'm pretty sure.
don't feel bad about that, man. Yeah.
So, like, my dad's issues definitely were replicated in me, and not replicating it with my son is uh, something I have to focus on, which fucking sucks when you have focusing issues. Like when like
Yeah.
autopilot is like your default mode, and people are like,
Hmm.
just like intentionally parent, and I'm like, man, I have a problem intentionally peeing. Like, I have a problem being aware that I have to pee, like like until I've got to pee.
Right. Yeah. Or it's
and
like, if one of your
and
like
that's an
main
autistic
struggles
thing
is
too,
like,
by the way.
yeah. It's like if one of your main struggles is like a lack of discipline. It's like, well, how do you improve things? Well, it takes discipline. So it's like,
And like, neat.
okay.
Next.
Yeah. So here's like another it's interesting comment from Tiffany here. Imagine if Adam and Eve never fell. Now, or real quick, going back to, I'm assuming this is the peeing thing. Oh, wait till you're older. It's worse.
No, I
Looking
know. Yeah, you
forward to
any
that.
excuse to
So,
dribble a little pee out. Like you laugh hard, you cough hard, you stand up too
yeah.
fast. Yeah, I hear about it.
Yeah. It's like, the age old question, boxers or briefs? Depends. Get it? It's funny.
No,
So imagine if Adam and Eve never felt. Now this is interesting because also I'm also not sure exactly where Tiffany's coming from. Like whether you're like, I don't know if you view that story as literally or if you're just talking about it like figuratively or like just, but like whatever it was that caused like the fall
mhm.
or yeah. Imagine though. Yeah. See, I don't see for me that's
The
like,
garden would have gotten crowded
well, maybe God
unless
had
it
plans
got
for
bigger.
expansion. Who knows?
Right. You
Yeah.
got a little suburb further up the
Hmm.
Tigris.
Yeah. Or as Tiffany
um,
says, like this, the sin that followed. Yeah. Yes. But, and again, this, like, yeah, this is like another reason I think it'd be very interesting to actually discuss this with you. Because honestly, like where I'm coming from is like, I don't really see sin as like an actual thing anymore. Like I see, I'm like, now that's
I think,
different
but
from
it depends
saying that I
how
don't,
it's defined.
yeah.
Is that? Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, depending on how it's fine. Or the gene pool would have never become distorted.
It's yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But it also depends because according like again, if you take the story literally, I mean, if it really did just start with two people and then their offspring, and like human propagation involved a lot of incest for a while.
oh
So I don't know
yeah.
what that does to the gene pool. But yeah,
Well,
but
these days it doesn't
yeah,
do anything good.
yeah.
At least not for very long.
Like, so that's the sin. So if you could let me know exactly what you're talking about there, like what is the sin? Like, sorry,
Talking about like the busted gene pool is the sin,
yeah,
or
yeah, maybe. Like you may or may not have noticed, like we both got ADHD, and like we're both talking about like a billion different things at once, or at least my brain thinks we're
yeah.
talking about a different billion things at once. So yeah, feel free to elaborate on that further. But yeah, but now I will say, like me saying, like I don't think sin is real. That's different from saying I don't think things like what we would call bad things happen. Like yeah, things that we call bad, like definitely still
But like
happen. Yeah,
you're talking about sin
yeah,
as an offense to God, right?
yeah. I mean, obviously, being an atheist and not believing there is a God, I don't believe like if something means an offense to God, then like well, if there is no God, then that's not a thing. But
Yeah.
but yeah, so for me, like wondering like so then how and again only being an atheist for a couple of years, like 2.5 years now maybe, like I'm still like figuring like or at least trying to figure like everything out and like trying to make sense of yeah everything including yeah let's see, we are born into sin, we commit sins. Now again like if you take like what we refer to as sins being like just the things that people do that are like cause harm or are things that we just generally prefer people wouldn't do, like yeah sure, and I think that is part of, I mean I guess you could say it's part of our nature, whatever that means to say things are part of our nature, like you say it's genetics or evolution or societal pressures. So yeah, whatever it is that causes us to do the things that we've referred to as sin, yeah, that does seem to be just part of like who we are as people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so for me, almost like the question of like what would it be like if we had never fallen and we would never sin? It's like, well, that's almost like asking what would it be like if we just weren't the people that we are, in a way, you know?
Yeah, that's a good. That's
Yeah,
helpful way to put it.
yeah. Pretty much saying the same thing. Okay, I'm glad we're
Yeah,
on a similar page at least there. So yeah.
I think so.
And I just like as far as like following like Tiffany's comments and like the conversation, I also just got to point out like just was it Trick or Treat? I think there was like a separate U.S. and European version because I heard you play the song "Murder Me" live, but I never got like the European version of the album that had that on that because the U.S. version was like, oh, we can't have that, but it was like I remember like hearing it like live. It's like that's a fucking awesome song. So yeah, great tunes. Yeah. So, but yeah, so yeah, this is still just surreal that I'm like actually, yeah. So this is still like surreal that I'm like actually having a conversation with you and you're like watching my show. That's really cool and would definitely love to have you on sometime. That'd be great. But yeah. Oh yeah, 3 band songs. I remember there were some others as well, but yeah.
Nuts.
Man, too hot for the Christian scene, that's for sure.
Yeah. Meanwhile, our country
yeah.
was doing horrible shit to other countries. It's just but we can't play that one song. Like there's 3
Yeah.
songs because
Yeah,
those are bad.
you can't play a song called "Murder Me," which if I remember correctly was about abortion, but we can actually like murder people with bombs, like by the
Sure.
hundreds every day. Like
Right
yeah, we
to
can actually
life.
do it. We just yeah, so pro life. But anyway, because I will say, like, so Tiffany, there was something you said on one of your live streams a couple weeks ago that I found fascinating that I would love to talk with you more about. Is you said the sentence, "Read Scripture, not the Bible," or something like that. And I was like, "That's fascinating. I'd love to know more your thoughts on that. So yeah, it was during the Columbine shootings. Yeah, I remember. So yeah,
Yeah,
people are very
I don't know. I mean, I can kind of see like where
yeah
they thought it was a good thing, but like that's not. The songs aren't the problem.
yeah yeah.
It,
I mean, like I listened to I listened to you guys, and
no, I mean
ended
I
up
can see
listening to
how
Manson.
someone
And,
else
yeah,
might think that makes sense. I don't think it makes sense.
yeah,
It didn't make sense,
yeah,
but I can see how somebody was making sense of it.
yeah. Which again, going back to if your view of the world, it's like, oh, yeah, Suicide Machine, Murder Me. Now, I have heard Suicide Machine and Kill Yourself, and I also love your explanation how like you separated like yourself into two words. I think it was you said like Eric Clayton from Savior Machine, another like one of my favorite bands from back in the day. Said I think he said like he recommended that because it's not so much like a kill yourself, but like kill yourself is more like an anti-ego thing, if I
Mhm.
remember. It's like that's a cool way to put it. But
There's a band
yep,
called
yep,
Suicide Machines that received
yeah,
no banning at all. That was a
yeah,
punk band, so maybe, that might
yeah.
be why.
Yeah, now I have heard the song "Kill Yourself." That's also another one of my favorites of yours because I managed to get. It might actually be signed. I don't know, but I have a copy of your "The Sick and the Beautiful" EP that I picked up at Cornerstone Festival at one point. It was like '99 or
Nice.
2000. So yeah, that Plastic Jesus, Triple X, good stuff.
I never made it to
Yeah,
Cornerstone. I made it to Ichthus, which was like
yeah.
it's like the We Played to Cornerstone.
Oh yeah, I mean, I went to Cornerstone for like so yeah. But yeah, I think I saw. I think I saw Rackets at Cornerstone twice. I think it was '99 and 2000. I want to say, but yeah, still like a couple of my favorite shows from both of those years. I think I went to Cornerstone starting in '99. I went 6 years in a row, but then it got so for people who aren't familiar, Cornerstone, it was like a Christian music festival. Like I was drawn to it because they of all the Christian music festivals, that one seemed to have the most of the like heavier, like more extreme metal
Yeah,
bands there. Well, so like thinking back the days, I had bands like Extol and Tourniquet and Living Sacrifice,
those are
Rackets and
pretty heavy.
Grapes,
Yeah,
yeah, Savior Machine, like Embodiment back when they were actually metal, like all the good stuff. But I remember, so I went there 6 years in a row. Then I remember the seventh year, I was looking at the lineup. I was like, okay, there's really only three bands. Yeah, I remember Gothic Knights. I remember, yeah, there was a place there called the Asylum. I remember seeing a band, Leper. I think now I think the show you're doing in South Bend, I think you're doing with Leper, and I'm hoping it's the same Leper that I saw at Cornerstone like back in the day.
like the
That
same musicians. You mean?
yeah, yeah, not like an actual leper. I'm like, yeah, I saw a leper at Cornerstone. I hope he's still alive and around.
Yeah,
No, but
that's for the smaller tents. Like those are the sideshow
yes,
bands.
awesome. So they're playing their first show in I don't know how many years in South Bend, Indiana. Now I want to make it to it. Now it's about 4 hours from here in Cincinnati. The only
It's not
conflict
bad.
is like so it's on Friday the 13th in September. The only problem is the 14th. That's my daughter's birthday. So we're trying to get that weekend like planned and figured out. So if I'm available, 24. Was it 24 years since your show last time playing? I believe that's what you mean by that. Well, yeah, it seems like probably about that long. Yeah. Damn.
Wow.
But oh yeah, but what was I saying? Oh yeah, so I went to Cornerstone 6 years in a row. Then the seventh year, I was looking at the lineup. I was like, okay, there's really only like yes, number of years. Wow. But also, welcome back to all of you. But so yeah, so went to Cornerstone 6 years in a row. Seventh year, I was looking at the lineup and I was like, okay, there's really only like three bands here that I'm really wanting to see, and they were Crimson Moonlight, Alathian, and Becoming the Archetype. And then I saw, oh, those
Crimson
three bands
Moonlight
are
was
also
harsh. Yeah.
yeah. But then I saw, oh, those three bands are also just touring together, and they're playing a show like in Indiana, which is like half the distance. So like, I'll save the $150 or whatever it was for the festival ticket and just go to their one show. So yeah, and it was a great show. But yeah, but anyway, Whew. So yeah, so thanks for this little trip down memory lane there, Tiffany. That's very much
Yeah,
appreciated. But so yeah, Matt, go listen to some Rackets and Drapes. I'll give you
I
some
will
like
need to.
specific. Yeah,
I
I'll give you.
I wasn't into super heavy stuff at the time. I was Ichthus was more my crowd at the time. I was more into like punk and somewhat ska. Uh,
Mm-hmm,
Definitely more into much heavier stuff now.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
Like if it
I've
sounds like it's like trying to rip the face off my soul, then it feels good.
yeah, I would say like it's. Yeah, I don't know how to adequately describe Rackets. So yeah,
Well,
I'll
no,
send you
that's
some. Yeah,
even better. I love stuff that like Igor. Remember that guy that
yeah, mm-hmm,
that is what the fuck is that? Like it's like opera slash
mm-hmm.
industrial slash metal. Like
Yeah.
yeah, no, I
Now,
really
now I will. Like, yes, I will agree on that. A couple of the albums, especially like Candyland, your first album is still like my absolute favorite. And will say like, yeah, it's one of those styles of music. Like, yeah, the music itself is good on its own, but yeah, like you got to see the show. It's they put on a damn good one. So yeah, so like I said, I'm hoping to catch your show in South Bend in September, but if not, like whenever you do more, I definitely want to. And like I said, I still might have my therapy patient card somewhere, but yeah, maybe even a couple of my T-shirts. Yeah, it's been so long. Yeah. Anyway, so all right. Well, Matt, any other thoughts on the article you wanted to touch on, or just in the
uh
concept of?
there were
Because, like I said,
loads of
we planned on making this a. Ooh, I'll get you negative. Sounds more like ooh. I will take it. Yeah, we'll be in touch. Yeah, but yeah, because I know we said like when we were talking about this is a topic, like I think you said this could probably be like a multi
yeah,
episode
this
discussion.
like
So no,
because we
you
could
already found
definitely
like other articles and even things to talk about. So yeah, so
so
yeah,
just in
this will
general,
definitely be to be continued.
yeah,
So
in this article, the some of the harmful elements. So while this person is clearly like wanting to love people and they want to respect their faith and needs of people, and there's some stretching going on trying to make that work. Um, so just some things that are just generally aren't going to be very helpful. So religious and moral framing is framing mental challenges just like body and makeup challenges, how brains work, like framing that in religious and moral terms is automatically problematic and leads to shaming and guilt. um,
mm,
Overgeneralization, like the Christian way the biblical way to do it is this, like when there are so many different ways in the Bible to do the same thing and they're not even on the same side. um, Also overgeneralizing neurodivergent people. She seems to be talking mostly about autism and ADHDers, but specifically what she calls higher functioning individuals, which leaves out most of people with neurodivergency, because there are people like with depression or anxiety challenges where like
mhm.
the term high functioning, even if she's using it, wouldn't even make sense to use because it's like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Um,
yeah. I don't know how you highly function with debilitating depression, but yeah,
Stigmatizing and pathologizing. Um,
yeah. At least according to that standard. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Like we said,
stigmatizing.
like however you're functioning, everyone is like that's as highly as you can function. So for you, yeah,
Yeah,
or one way, this wasn't necessarily related to this, but I thought it was a good quote. Like, so on the days when you can only give like 40% and you're giving 40%, you gave 100%.
yeah.
I was like, that's a good way to look at it.
It's what really is the best you could give in that moment? Probably what you gave. Like
Hmm.
so,
Yeah.
even comparing yourself to yourself at other times is can be unhelpful. Like, okay,
Oh
comparing
yeah.
me to
Yeah.
me right now, like that
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's an implied pressure to adapt that she's leaning on. Not helpful,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because that pressure to adapt, it can be a huge burden for people who are neurodivergent. Um, just kind of this is okay. The implied value judgments or the implied value statements. That's something that is very heavy in a lot of churches. The mega church we came from, they implied quite a lot. They implied the things that were too caustic or negative to say out loud. They danced around it until like you came to the same conclusion they were trying to get you to, but the fact that it wasn't said out loud, people could start to think that came from God, when really you were convinced by beating around the bush into thinking this thing they were beating around the bush about. And you know what I mean? Like, no, that even if there is a Holy Spirit, like, no, that was them backhandedly like convincing you of something. You know, using the cognitive distortions, the biases, and the fallacies, you can get somebody's brain to think something without telling them what to think. And then so many people, weirdly, so many people in the service are having the same thought and the same internal condemnation. But because it's from God, it's conviction. Like, convicted of what? Only guilty people can get convicted. Like, isn't that condemnation?
Yeah, that's maybe one of the most damaging things that was like taught to me growing up that I totally bought. Was like, well, if you feel guilty, it's because you actually are.
Or it's a lie.
Yeah.
I mean, or somewhere in between. There were loads of sneaky fallacies in here. The appeal to authority, religious authority, that's an easy one to find.
I mean, it's kind of a given with the Gospel Coalition.
Right.
I mean, that's their MO.
There's a bias with that. False dilemmas, it's either this or it's that. Usually not. Usually it's something in between.
Tiffany can relate to the guilt, like raised Catholic. Like,
oh yeah, guilt is a spiritual gift in Catholicism.
I was raised very fundamentalist Baptist, which I hear from other Catholics. Like, there's a lot of crossover there, especially as far as like the guilt is concerned.
Yeah, I was raised loosely Catholic.
Yeah, because I remember like with like other people, like just kind of sharing like my like kind of Christian background, like without saying like what kind of church or whatever. Like, I've had like people at least once say to me, okay, based on what you're telling me, you were either Catholic or Baptist. Which is funny, because if you ask if you were to tell a Baptist how similar they were to Catholic, like, they'd have a heart attack
and burst into flame.
Yeah.
All right, so false dilemmas, it's black, which is kind of like black and white. That's a cognitive distortion. Super harmful to have black and white thinking about yourself. Shit, that's like one of the hardest things to move past in therapy and stuff. Hasty generalizations, that's pretty obvious too. So, all right, now here's where I think this is important. I'll breeze through these real fast, but this is actual. It's actual.
I'm sorry, that was one. I just love that. Like, these are important. I'll breeze through them real quick. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, this is more just like support.
You see, Matt, if they were really important, you wouldn't breeze through them. See, sorry.
But this is more like the footnotes for everything we've talked about. Here's the research.
I'm being a dick.
No, it's all right. No, and even though I know you're being sarcastic and a dick because of my autism, I like, part of me has to take you seriously, and so even though like I know you're kidding, I still have to respond like it's serious.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and part of me has to respond knowing that, oh, someone's probably taking me seriously. I need to over-explain what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Welcome to the humanity, folks. That's how we fucking roll. No.
All right, so here's like actual research, like proven stuff, how like like biblical fundamentalist view on neurodivergence and mental health is harmful. It's a reinforcement of mental health stigmas, uh, like like you're an addict because you're bad at being a person, like that kind of thing, or like you're depressed because you couldn't hack being happy, like like dumb shit like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
So it often like reinforces mental health stigmas. It can be a huge barrier to seeking and receiving effective treatment, especially if you're going to a Christian counselor or therapist who doesn't have a psychology degree or something related, or they're just like, "No, I have a counseling degree from Bible college. Sweet, this will be dumb as hell." No, that's not true. I did have actually a good therapist who was a Christian therapist from good old
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati Christian University.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Nice.
both of them actually did a decent job despite themselves, or
Yeah.
despite no, that was me.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas Tiffany says, yeah, ex addict, it's a huge mental health issue. Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, no, I
Which and props to you on the X part of that. So
seriously, um, no, I'm not on board with the whole like once an addict always an addict. That's bullshit.
hmm.
Like recovering addict like can apply to people depending on like where they are, but like being an ex addict totally a thing because my dad
Hmm.
was as well. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And I had an uncle who was like an alcoholic and he like recovered. What was there 35 this year from meth? Wow, man.
Damn, not easy at all. My wife's cousin had a challenge with
Man,
that. Uh,
man. The
no,
rest of this
it's
is for you, man.
seriously that's one of the most
Yeah.
difficult ones to be clean from. Like that's by the way, clean. I don't know if you use that term. I just realized maybe don't like it for me to use because what's the opposite of clean? Dirty. No, people aren't dirty when they're an addict. That's gross.
Yeah.
But if somebody
Yeah.
wants to say like a clean 35 years, awesome. Like just I have a
Hey, I'm sorry. For what?
is about my dad or about the clean
Oh,
challenge or
yeah.
he was
Yeah.
he
But
was
yeah.
especially
Yeah.
functional for most of my life, so
Yeah. Like I
I
said,
had it
like so
better than a lot of other people.
yeah, so I had an uncle who was an alcoholic and he like stopped drinking like to the point where like I remember like because he was like had like successfully like kicked it to the point where he was like at a party or something and like he had a drink that he didn't realize had alcohol in it and he like actually
Mm.
like started drinking it but immediately like he was able to like immediately like put it down. It wasn't like well might as well like he was like no he was done with that
Yeah.
shit. I was like so like that's not easy. And
No, those
then I
choices are not
actually
easy.
have another person I know who um, also like is used to be an alcoholic, but now can actually drink occasionally and like under control. And I'm like, I mean, that's like either way you do it, whether it's like total
Yeah.
abstention, is that a word? Yeah. Or continuing in moderation. Like either way, that's like kick ass. Like, I don't know how you do it,
No,
but yeah.
yeah. All right, so next thing, not to sorry, that was an abrupt move on from addiction talk. That I don't mean it
I
like that.
mean, I mean, we've been going to like well over 2 hours. We should probably
Yeah, so
start wrapping up things at some point. But yeah,
spiritualizing psychological issues,
yeah.
I think that's problematic for reasons we can all understand. And these are all things that like have been proven through studies.
Hmm.
Like these are facts. Spiritualizing psychological issues, which are basically like medical issues,
Hmm.
uh, obviously
Yeah.
problematic. Negative coping mechanisms. I'm still unlearning, basically like relearning how to human after having some like negative coping skills that I acquired from spiritual warfare thinking and all that. Uh, that's I think it's part of why people are so afraid to like if they realize they don't believe anymore, but they're like afraid to admit it or accept it because they're hanging on to something. Um, I think it's the fear of like, what do I do without this particular way of coping? Because you unlearn all the stuff that you just learned growing up, or if you were not a believer previously. Um, yeah, uh, and it will looking at things in a spiritual way that don't have to be looked at in a spiritual way, because there is an actual medical and science uh, uh, reasoning behind it. It it will limit how much help somebody gets from professionals.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like, well, I think this part of it is spiritual, but that part is stuff, they'll limit themselves to getting help from science professionals from or in just those areas that they've deemed to be automatic and biologic and stuff. And when we talk more about I think our personal experiences, we'll get more into how those negative effects play out.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's like the not bibliography. That's the footnotes.
Yeah. And as Tiffany says, yeah, admitting is the first step to healing. Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
But before that, like, interesting question. But do addicts commit sin? Now, as I've said before, like not believing in the concept of sin to begin with, like, the easy flippant answer would be no. But I think, like, with, again, it depends like what you mean by sin. So like what most people would consider sin, I think this also has to do with like the whole, like, free will obviously comes into this. It's like, so, but if someone's like, so I guess really like the core of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like, I mean, this is you could do a whole episode on this question, but
yeah.
yeah. So I guess it really depends on like how you view, like, how much control does the addict actually have, and also,
Hard to tell.
yeah, and also like to the point of, sorry, I completely forgot what that also was going to, but so that, is it free will if you're an addict? I think not, and like, yeah, I would tend to agree.
Yeah, I would say
So,
there's definitely less of a case to be made. Absolutely, less of a case to be made for free will uh, within addiction. I think it's also
mhm,
challenging to argue free will just in like in typical human beings. Um, we are aware of whatever's happening as if it's free will, and we seem to not be able to live life through any other interpretation very well. Um,
mhm,
but that's something that's still like science is still chasing and seems to be going in the direction of like we're cause and effect machines. Um,
mm,
but our
yeah,
experience is still as if we have free will because that's like
yeah,
our conscious awareness of it.
yeah, yeah, man. See, this is why, like, we need to have Tiffany on sometime, because it's like every other comment like you're leaving is like, that's like an entire show topic. We're talking right there.
I
So
now I from my personal experience, addiction taints all kinds of decisions, and it's even more
yeah,
challenging. Like in the case of my dad, who was undiagnosed, but because I'm so much like him, I'd say he was almost definitely ADHD and autistic, uh, and it's just. By the way, neurodivergent people are way more likely to be addicts than not
mm,
than the general population. Also, way more likely to be queer, especially trans for some reason. Um, like there's like if somebody is trans, they are much more likely to be autistic than the general population. Uh,
mm,
by like 20% or something more. It's it's substantial. No, anyway, addiction would combine with neurodivergence. Like it, no, it's super hard to like. In my mind, growing up, I could either say like it was either like my dad's bad day at work, or he's drinking a lot, or he's just being an asshole right now. Or there was I was thinking about it one or the other. And when you're little, whatever's happening, you think it's your fault. It's either your
Oh yeah.
reward or your punishment, no matter what's happening, because it's all about
Right.
you.
Right. Right. Yeah. Real
And
quick,
fuck it if it's not
Tiffany.
sinister.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tiffany confirmed. Most on the spectrum. Yes. So.
which I I love neurodivergent people. Like
Well, good, because I'm one.
no, and like trans people are awesome to be around.
Yeah.
Like never, I've never met like a disingenuous trans person. You know,
Hmm.
first of all, like living as yourself, I think you have to lose being disingenuous. I think that's an awesome side effect
Yeah.
of living as
Yeah.
yourself in that way.
Yeah. It's almost like you're like it's like intentionally, almost aggressively, like genuine.
Right,
Like
which
you kind of have to be.
puts a whole lot of people off.
Huh. No, Skippy says you're intersex under the trans flag. Oh, okay.
That is a now
Good to
that's a
know.
category. That's a people group that is just ignored by the Christian church in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah. Like
Like
we said, like they've only recently become comfortable with the terms gay.
seriously.
like I have a one of my trans friends who one of the regular viewers of the show may or may not be watching right now. I don't know.
Oh, and by the
But
way,
yeah, he
Tiffany, thanks for sharing that. Like you don't
yeah.
know us. Thanks for sharing
Yeah,
that.
and yeah, and also please let me know like your preferred pronouns because I think like earlier I said something like for you like way to go man or something like if that was like I don't know what your pronouns are so please correct me or let me know how you like to be referred to. But yeah, okay, she her okay. Apologize for the
Fantastic.
man part, but yeah, yes, yeah. But thanks for letting me know. But yeah, like my friend who's I call my wife dude sometimes. Yeah, yeah. For me, like dude, I use dude as a completely gender neutral term. Like I call
Yeah,
everyone dude. Yeah,
I call my
totally with
wife
you there.
dick sometimes. She'll just be having like one of those like
Pretty sure.
grumping on the like aggressive grumping on the outside for like no apparent reason, and she'll just walk in and say something and be like, "Why are you being a dick?"
Oh, well, it's a West Coast thing. Well, then as in Midwestern Ohio, and that makes me feel cool because I'm doing a West Coast thing. But yeah, so I have
Welcome to the past,
yeah,
Ohio.
basically. Yeah, but speaking of like Christians, like just catching up with the whole gay thing, because like I have a friend who's trans, like a trans man, like oh, I appreciate that, bruh, or I don't know, is bruh gender neutral? I don't know, like yeah. All I know is that's what my 12-year-old son calls me sometimes, but
Yeah, mine
so
too.
yeah, so my friend who's like a trans man, like but like he would like talk with people from the church that we go to
Mm,
and they can basically and so it's a trans man in a relationship with a woman and they basically say it's almost like they just consider them a lesbian couple. It's like no. It's like
it's like
it's like
thanks for working up to that. However, it's
yeah.
like good effort, team. Next time, try
Yeah.
not losing.
Oh man. Anyway, I know, right?
People gonna people the best they can people. Sometimes it pisses me off.
Yeah, stitch that on a pillow. Man.
People gonna people the best they can people, but also fuck people.
I mean, how else are you gonna get more people, right? Labels are for soup cans.
Is that what
But be
Andy
sure to
Warhol's trying
remove.
to say?
But be sure to remove before you recycle, or
I
something.
think that's what Andy Warhol was trying to say with his like soup can like matrix thing, because
Ooh.
dude was dude was out there for his time, like in a good way.
Oh yeah.
He was like, I'm
Mhm.
Andy Warhol, fuck it. Like,
Yeah, I
it's
think
like,
that's what his business card said, I think.
he was
Yeah.
like, dudes, ladies, doesn't matter. I'm down. Look at my painting. Labels are for soup cans.
Thank you for coming to his TED Talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we missed out. Andy Warhol giving a TED talk would be something.
Ooh. Yeah. Hmm.
That should be a one
Yeah.
man show on like off Broadway or something. Just like somebody like, you know, playing Andy Warhol giving a TED talk about the meaning of life or some shit.
I like it. I'd see it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I want to kind of wrap up. Before I wrap up, Tiffany, I want to give you a chance, like I said, because I definitely want to make sure Matt like gets to know some of your stuff. But if you want to let the other viewers like be able to like listen to your stuff, if you want to leave some links or any places where people can check out your music, because I know like, I mean, I have Apple Music, and I think like it only has like some of your like more recent stuff. And I know there, you have some stuff on Bandcamp, and I don't know if you have. I don't have Spotify, but if you have things on there, but yeah, if you want to leave some links, or if
Yeah.
people just want to like click on your Facebook page link and follow you there. But yeah, if there's any further things, if you feel free to leave that in the comments so people can check you out. Bandcamp and YouTube. So yeah, look them up, folks.
Nice.
Rackets and Drapes. Like they have a show, and if anyone is, yeah, just Google. There you go. Yeah, they have a show coming up Friday, September 13th in South Bend, Indiana. Like I said, I'm going to try to make it there. So hey, if people want to see them and meet me, also going to try to get my friend Richard to go. Richard, if you're watching. Like I said, also got to check like with my daughter, whatever she has planned for her birthday.
Maybe we'll get Gummies to work on Tommy then.
But yeah. Anyway, things you're wanting to get to with this. Like I said, we plan on continuing this. Like yes, and Leper, another band who's going to be performing with them. I remember seeing them. Gosh, I would have seen them. It was like more than 20 years ago now. Fuck. Anyway, good stuff. But anyway, any other thoughts on the topic? Like I said, we definitely want to talk more about this in a future episode. Tiffany, if you would like to join us sometime, like get in touch. I will make that happen.
Yeah.
That would be super awesome.
I think the short solution to all these challenges is whatever person you want to be loving towards, ask them. what
yes.
Like what would be loving?
Yes.
What would they interpret as loving or experience as loving? And then do that and stop running it through your whatever your cultural filter is or belief filter. Because look, if like when you're a Christian, or if you're a Christian, you look in the Bible, and whatever you do it with love, because you don't have love, it's nothing. It's as useless as just like a banging gong, or whatever they said.
Yeah.
Like err on the side of love if you're a Christian, and you might need to sacrifice parts of your faith or doctrine in order to make that happen. But if you don't, then you're just a noisy gong potentially. And so like err on the side of loving. I think that's what's best for neurodivergent people. Speaking as a neurodivergent person, super offensive whenever somebody's like, let me do what I'm assuming is helpful for you. And then you're like, no, dude, you're an ass. Shut up. Stop it. And and then they're like,
yep, love the neighbor is the greatest commandment. Yep.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Super important to solve a lot of problems. Also impossible to build a doctrine around that, because love is very fluid and not conditional, but like situationally conditional sometimes.
Yeah, circumstantial, situational. Yeah. Person to person. Yeah, that's why I prefer the what's known as the platinum rule, because like we have the golden rule, which is definitely like an improvement on a lot of things of its time, which is like, treat others the way you would want to be treated. But I like the way the platinum rules is like treat others the way they want to be treated. Which, no shade to Jesus, at least for now. I'll get to that later. But yeah, like,
And that's even
yeah,
Jesus
talk
as
if you,
portrayed by other people. So
yeah, I mean, yeah,
that's
who
even
knows?
roundabout. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, that's a whole other episode or more. Yeah, or karma. Yeah, that's one way to look at things. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely cause and effect. That's a real thing.
No, and there are. I think it's easier to make a case for
Yeah, yeah,
karma in some ways because
mm-hmm.
just the effects
Yeah,
that like behaving a certain way has on the human mind and anybody else who's receiving that interaction.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And most religions follow that because most religions are by people, and I think people are more similar than a lot of these religions would maybe give us credit for.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you think if you want to really know if you're being loving to someone, ask them if they are feeling loved by what you're doing. And something I said earlier in the episode, I think maybe my kind of summing thought on the whole topic, and this could apply for so many things. Again, just when you see someone behaving a certain way or acting a certain way or doing things or not doing things, don't just assume same reasons that you. So remember, like, people's brains behave differently. So again, with the whole like, oh, if this was really important to you, you would make time for it. Whole like mantra that people that have. It's like, okay, yeah, for you, if you're what we call neurotypical and you actually have what we call executive function that's working well, yeah, if things are important to you, you make it happen. But other people like yeah, don't just assume that if they aren't doing it, then that means, well, that's not important to them because yeah, yeah,
Or that we're bad at
yeah,
being a biblical man or woman or super problematic because there's all kinds of in between. But
yeah,
those are the
yeah. I mean,
categories.
I think like to be a good biblical man, like I need to have multiple concubines by now, for one. Like, I'm like totally dropping the ball on that. So,
You're
so
like,
if anyone's
honey, just
interested,
saying.
so if anyone's interested, I mean, come on, this dick ain't getting any less wrinkly. Let's be honest.
Oh, aggressively honest.
It's like get while the getting's good. All right. Well, we got to run too, Tiffany. So yeah,
Yep.
like I said, awesome / surreal to be actually like talking with you. Hope to do it more in the future. But yeah, this was fun. Thanks for participating. Very much appreciate it. So
Yes.
all right. All right. Well, I guess this conversation kind of like to be continued, and I will have a great night because I plan on
You
having
too.
at least one more beer and then sleep. That's my plan. So that sounds
I
like a
didn't
good
even
night for
get
me.
to my mellow corn yet.
Ah, well. Well, this is what
After show.
this is what the after show's for. So, all right, folks. Well, all right. Well, speaking of wrinkly dicks, you want to Benny our dicks, and
That's a hell of a segue.
I do what I can. It's
So
for the
that was a
people.
good talk. It went
That
more
was.
lighthearted than I expected because like you and I both have our experiences being different than typical. Um,
A few.
in less than helpful environments. So,
Yeah.
people, may your things and stuff be forever with your people.
Forever and ever, amen. All right. Good night. See you next week, folks. I got to remember where the thing is that I do. Here it is.
Where's
All
the?
right. Now I got it. Bye, everybody.